And we're live. Ruiri, I ask every guest when they come over to the house, do they want tea or coffee before we come out of the tunnel and start the recording? And you picked tea, and I made you tea, and we came out and we sat down, and we weren't sitting down here 2 seconds, and you started talking about fluoride in the tea and in the water, and I just went, whoa, 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 whoa. We'll keep it for the recording. So, where was that train of thought going? Or, you know, if you can pick up from where you were.
Well, I suppose it's we're jumping into the deep end now. I was right. I suppose it was I'm a walking bag of contradictions. That's what I was kind of saying to you, you know?
Okay.
Because here I am drinking a cup of tea. Like I wouldn't take the coffee because it seems to give me palpitations. I try to keep away from coffee, although I do love it. But being an Irishman, I'm a bit fond of the tea. But knowing what I know about the tea and what I've got involved in myself over the last few years, but officially few months. It's a bit of a contradiction because fluoride is harmful for us, you know, and we are the only nation in Ireland that has fluoridated water.
The only nation in the world?
Yeah. Well, no, in Europe, sorry.
Okay.
Like, I think America, some states and that have it, some don't. Like in Ireland now in Cork, they've started to try and get it out. There's councils that have actually stopped the fluoridation of the water because of the findings that have been made, you know. But this guy called Declan Walk, he's a pretty cool man, but he's devoted an awful lot of time to research and using, like, he's an academic of sorts. I can't remember what he is, physicist or I can't remember.
Chemist maybe or whatever.
Yeah, he's something important anyway. He's qualified, yeah. So he's wrote a few submissions, he's wrote a few articles, theses, and he's proven that the fluoride is causing all sorts of harm to people who are exposed to it on a extensive level continuously, you know. But as well, the thing that really surprised me about it in his studies was that it naturally occurs in tea, you know. And so Ireland, we love our tea, you know. We're fairly fond of a cup of tea. Everything is over a cup of tea and a scone or something like that, you know. So we're very exposed to this neurotoxin, and it is classified as a neurotoxin, you know.
So we're getting double doses of it between it being in the water and then it being in our tea.
Yeah.
Almost a compounding effect.
Yeah, like even if you were to anybody was to look at the back of their toothpaste, like it's in toothpaste, it was put in our water because it's supposed to be good for our teeth, you know. Now, it could be good for our teeth, but it's bad for other things, you know. So I don't know where it weighs out or where they made the decision, but that is the case. We have the fluoride in the water. Dental fluorosis, they say, can be caused by fluoride. So there's also other complications that can arise from having overexposure to fluoride for your teeth, you know, even though it's ironic enough because it was put in for the reason to protect our teeth. But Declan has made a submission basically now, and he got a load of signatures, and I'm delighted to have my name down on it, but it turned out he got hundreds and hundreds of signatures in the end, but he got people like Christy Moore and Declan O'Rourke and Damien Dempsey. I think he might have got Jordan, the film director, Irish film director, playwrights, Liam Neeson, some big names.
Very influential people.
Very influential people. So he's after managing, with the information he's garnered and with the studies he's published, he's managed to convince people there's definitely something worth considering here. And then when you look at the sicknesses that can arise from overexposure to fluoride, those sicknesses per capita in Ireland are higher than any other nation in Europe. So the coincidence there only is our exposure to fluoride, you know. So that submission has gone forward now. I don't know what's happening with it. I'm very proud to have my name on it, and we'll see where it goes from there. But that's what the whole tea thing came from, because he came up with the conclusion that it naturally occurs in tea. So that combined with it in your water supply can't be a good thing, you know. So it's classified as a neurotoxin. Like, it's officially, it's same as aluminium or mercury. It's classified as a neurotoxin. If you look at the back of your toothpaste packets, it says contains so many milligrams parts per million of fluoride, and it also says if fluoride is ingested from any other source, contact your doctor, you know. So everybody in Ireland who brushes their teeth basically needs to be contacting their doctor every day.
Or drinks the water out of the tap.
Or drinks the water out of the tap. But it's not, like, it's been proven it's not just drinking it. Like, you can get it from even having showers and stuff. You get exposure to it. But there's ways of flushing yourself out, just keeping fluids in the, you know, a lot of vitamin D, which is something we don't get too much of here as well. But there's ways of countering it, you know. And
what are the symptoms or the end? What's the end cause? Because, you know, what are we suffering from if it is a neurotoxin? I mean, is there something that...
Yeah, well, neurological disorders, they're at a higher rate here. The likes of, I think they've proven that like arthritis and build up of calcium in bones and joints and stuff like that can be contributed towards. Now, these are all points that are being argued by academics,
Yes.
And like I've seen them all. It's something that interested me because, well, probably a big starting point. I'd be classified, I suppose, as your typical conspiracy theorist,
Yes.
So that's the type of person I'd be looked at. So these are the kind of things that are all within them categories, and everybody who starts questioning the world we're living in, if there's something more to it, they'll nearly all come across the fluoride story, But then everybody who thinks that everybody who's talking about these things and that all these topics are just wacky conspiracy theory stuff, they kind of just discount fluoride because it's associated with the conspiracy theorists, and they don't really look more into it, So when people like Declan Walk come along who have credentials and he can speak well for himself, when he comes along and does stuff like this, then it has weight, And then when you get the signatures and the people behind that, as you were saying before we come on air, society is us, So once people in power kind of get together and stand up for something, you will get what you want, But it's very hard to get that unity on anything,
Usually when you try and either implement something or remove something, there's a pushback from a vested interest.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And in the case of fluoride, is there an obvious vested interest? I mean, is there a huge, big fluoride manufacturer, that...
No, there doesn't seem to be. Like, I remember when the topic was brought up a couple of times over the last few years, I think Sinn Féin might have proposed it at some stage, and I definitely remember a couple of years back Pat Kenny on News Talk, maybe could have been RTE before his News Talk days, but on News Talk he had someone on to speak about it, but he had a dentist on, someone that was in that field, and they stated categorically that they kind of mocked the whole concept that fluoride could be altering people's ability to use their critical thought, that it's calcifying the pineal gland and all these kind of things, which it has been proven to do, like that the studies prove it, so it's there's always kind of some pushback, but it's not as obvious, I suppose, as like the tobacco industry pushing back or the meat industry pushing back or the dairy
the
against
or pharma.
Yeah, because there's so much money in that and you can see a massive industry in that, but like I can't understand why. Like the conspiracy theory behind it is that it was used by Stalin and Hitler, and historical documentation seems to prove that, but you have to take everything you see online with a pinch of salt, even if it is...
To what end? Sorry to cut across you, but in relation to Hitler and Stalin using
well,
it, to what end?
That in the concentration camps that they introduced fluoride into the water supply to make the inmates more docile, basically less likely to put up a fight. So
right.
That was
again presumably in a lot higher dosages than
you'd imagine so. You'd imagine so, yeah. Like it's something now. Thank God for Declan Walk and people like him. It's something now, and even like the Lancet, the medical journal, like well known all over the world, they classified it as a neurotoxin. I think 4 or 5 years ago, officially. So it is a neurotoxin, and so we don't want that. But then people say it's only tiny parts per million. So it's not going to do you any harm, but constant exposure to it over and over again,
Oh yeah, over time as well, more to the point.
Yeah.
I mean, you can wax lyrical about minute amounts not having any effect of you, but if they were all of a sudden putting a very minute amount of lead in the water,
yeah,
you'd be fucking up in arms about it.
Yeah, exactly,
but
yeah.
What's puzzling me about the whole story is, I suppose, the idea that it will be essentially just a way of saving the state money, if nothing else.
Yeah, because it's like it's a waste of sorts, and someone's going to have to dispose of it. So, like, you wonder, is it just a handy way of disposing of this stuff? If it has been stated by some corners of academia to be good for your teeth,
And worldwide, is there any this doctor that you mentioned, or the movement, say that the anti-fluoride movement, if you could call it that, have they made any case that Irish people's teeth aren't in any better condition than the rest of the world that isn't using it?
I have heard, you hear different
what's the pros given for it being there? Like chlorine, granted, it kills bacteria or whatever else.
Yeah, but it's funny because he mentioned chlorine there. My young fella, he's in secondary school and they were at home doing chemistry, like parts of the science what curriculum, whatever homework he had, and they were writing out like the terminology for chlorine and oxygen and nitrogen and stuff like this, in their CH2 forms and whatever it is, and like it was given a rundown of it. And the chlorine, when I said about the chlorine is used in everyday life in a lot of places, we use it continuously, but it is a poison, at the same time, but we use it every day, and I know it's in small parts, but like all of these different things, you go swimming, sometimes the smell, taste of chlorine in some swimming pools is ridiculous,
Oh,
but
sure, like we literally we take it for granted now that you have to have goggles when you get into a pool because the chemicals in the water sting you so badly, and we've grown up with that, and it's been there for so long that we never really question the validity of that. Like surely there's a better way of purifying the water than pouring it with chemicals that burn the eyeballs out of your head.
Absolutely, yeah.
When you think about it,
it just does seem crazy. There's so much of this stuff, and like as I'd say, I'd be a walking contradiction of myself because like I have bad habits. I don't eat great sometimes. I smoke. I drink occasionally, very occasionally.
Yeah, but I wouldn't class that as hypocritical because I'm in favour of reducing my carbon footprint and fighting fighting global warming generally. But I still drive everywhere. Do you know that kind of way? So like I wouldn't consider myself a hypocrite because of that. So
yeah, like I think more so when you have kids, these type of things. Like I feel like I've been guzzling from the tap water in my life. I'm not dead,
Yeah.
But like then again, I wasn't a big fan of water. But at school, the kids are all, you'd be going to school with your drum of water from the tap and mixed with dilutables.
Blackcurrant or orange or something like that.
And then there's other chemicals in that, like aspartame as well known. Like if you go to any of the good health shops now and get protein bars, you'll have listings now where it says free from aspartame. Like that's another kind of chemical that's studies have proven that's not too harmful. So like I'd be thinking my kids going to school, most kids going to school are getting the tap water with these dilutable drinks with aspartame in them, all these things that have potential harmful effects to somebody if they're having a strong immune system, So like you look at all these things and you're trying to figure out what's safe and what's not, and sure you're bombarded from all angles with chemicals, whether it's pollutants, as you're saying, you worry about the global warming, like the carbon footprint thing. Not to venture too far offline.
No, go. The whole nature of these conversations.
I know, yeah, but
is
like the carbon thing, like there's an argument, like carbon is the building block of life,
Yes, it certainly is. And biological life, say.
Yeah, and biological life relies on a certain amount of carbon within the atmosphere for life to thrive, So, like global warming can be debated. Some people can say it's a cyclical thing that's happening. Some people can say it is definitely happening right now. Because of all the emissions we're causing with planes and cars and gas guzzling machines and stuff. But there is an argument to say that carbon is very important. So, like we're so extensively trying our best to limit carbon emissions, which is kind of cool now. I'm not saying, I'm trying not to completely sound like a Donald Trump head here or something like that, let all the gas guzzlers free. But I just watched all these mad weather patterns over the last few years, and like we can see in our lifetime, we don't know what happened before, we have to look at records and that. So in our lifetime, looking at our grandparents and our mother and fathers, weather has seemed to change, especially in these really extreme climates. It seems to be getting extreme and acting erratically the whole time.
So the weather now or the climate?
Well, the climate.
Would you know the what would differentiate weather from climate, say? Because the weather can change, like especially in Ireland, you could have the 4 seasons in the one day.
Yeah.
But climate, not so much. Like in Ireland, say we live in a temperate climate. And
it was
a temperate climate 500 years ago and 1,000 years ago. Do you know that kind of way?
Yeah. So it's never been like this, like Australia. It's just hot all year round. Is that what you mean?
Not in Ireland. Not unless you go back to like eons. You're talking millions of years. Maybe it was a desert 10 million years ago or whatever, I don't know, but over enormous stretches of time things do change. Like there's massive coal deposits in the Arctic, say, and that's because once upon a time the Arctic was a tropical rainforest. But again, that wasn't a couple of 100 years ago. That could have been a couple of 100 million years ago.
Yeah.
So weather would be something that can change on an hourly basis, especially here. But climate, not so much.
Yeah, and that's when you're talking about the degree change. That's basically when you're going to that level. The global climate has dropped by 1-2%. Could be colossal. They say like ice caps will melt and all these kind of things. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like the worrying aspect of it all. Like I don't know. I've just seen arguments stating the importance of carbon, and I see us basically taking it out of the environment as much as we possibly can. I see in tangent with that, I see all these weather pattern changes, and I see these extreme, like you have, like the tornado season is the same as always is, but like you see some places being devastated by floods and bushfires and things like that have never happened before, Well, in our lifetime,
that's attributed to global warming.
Yeah, well, that's what they say. But see, there's another place. I'm nearly afraid to venture where I'm going to venture.
Go for it.
But like, there's.
I'm going to ask you who they are. When you say they, that's what they say. Or do you mean, or could you have just as easily have said that's what's said?
Well, no, there was like, the awkward thing. Like, there's like people will argue against climatologists. They say they're like a new breed of people, and it's kind of in their interest to validate the whole global warming theory because that gives them purpose and meaning, and it gives them a platform to work from.
Well, if you're a climate change expert, you don't want climate change to be
debunked. Yeah. So that's the way it is, So it's like everything. These avenues open, jobs and livelihoods become dependent on them. So people will fight tooth and nail to protect that, like you see like what happens with Graham Hancock and him trying to challenge the Egyptologists, like they've dedicated their entire lives to this belief system, and that was that their career was based on. And then to have these guys coming along and coming up with really logical alternative explanations for some of these things, and these lads are like, just, it's pride, it's the importance of keeping their job intact and stuff like that as well. But there's an argument that the climatologists could be in the same league. And then what worries me, you see, I always kind of look to see there'll be a problem, reaction, solution kind of thing, There's a sequence to everything all through the ages. Like there seems to be a problem comes about, there's a reaction that comes from the people in mass, and then there's a solution usually already ready to be provided by the ruling class, so to speak, So as a true conspiratorial headbanger, I always look ahead and see cui bono, like who does it suit? So when it comes to the global warming thing, I was completely like, look what's happening. Ice caps are melting, polar bears are getting real skinny, and all these real emotive images are thrown up to us. So anybody who's kind of feels liberal, truly liberal, and that there should be fairness and we shouldn't destroy the environment, and I feel like my green finger I'm very aware of it. I still look beyond and see how are they going to counter this? So what are they offering us? So you look now, like this August or this September, there's this insane scientist called David Keith, and he's insane. He's crackers, but he has the patent for this new approach to weather modification. So it's basically geoengineering. So he's going to pump up Tucson, Arizona. I think it's going to be done. So this is the first official to let everybody know attempt to alter the weather. And it's been something that they have been doing, like President Lyndon B. Johnson. When was he president? Sure. Like he done a speech way back when. You can get it online to like a college graduate somewhere in Massachusetts, I think. And he spoke to them about how they've figured out there's a new scientific way that they can actually modify the weather, and they could use, rather than going in and having wars in countries, they could cause droughts, they could do things like this by changing the weather patterns,
Yeah, I've heard of this kind of talk, yeah.
So it's something that is historically documented. And if they were doing it back in Lyndon B. Johnson's time, just imagine how sophisticated the whole setup is now, And fast forward now to September this year, 2018, the first official, in our generation, in our time being alive, the first official display of this weather modification is going to be attempted. And he's going to let a balloon up into the air. The balloon is going to go up into the higher atmosphere. It's going to burst, or they're going to penetrate it in some way, shape or form. And all these nanoparticulates, and it's either sulfur dioxide or sulfuric acid, something crazy anyway.
Yeah,
It's what the planes actually dump in the sky. And this David Keith fella himself, he was on the Letterman show and he was on Panorama. I seen him last year and the year before, and I was looking at him going, this man is Lula, you know, but he's really intelligent, scientific Lula. And he's the patent for this thing now, so he's a vested interest to push this new industry where they can block out the sun. So their plan is, because of global warming and because of this massive threat to us, they're going to start blocking the sun out to reflect the heat away from the earth so that they can reverse this process of global warming that we've caused, you know. So in tandem with that, you look at like the UN has, like, they have agendas, they set agendas for every 10-15 years. This is what they hope the world is going to be like in 10-15 years. So like they had the 2030 plan. It's to interlink basically all this new smart system we have. So the smart system is coming on board. We're introducing smart meters, smart TVs, fridges, the whole lot. So the intention is to cut out a loss of energy from houses. So if you're building a house now, they're all graded here in Ireland, A, B, C, D.
Yeah,
if you don't have triple glazed windows, you're going to be penalised and you'll be paying higher taxes and stuff like that. So, so they're trying to promote the use of renewable energies and a lack of loss of heating from your house and stuff like that. So like they want eventually that you have no actual vents in your house, that you'll have an electric vent that will open at times itself, linked into the electrical system, and will let some air into the house.
Yeah, like a heat recovery system of sorts.
Yeah. I don't like that. You know, I don't like that. I kind of want to go back to the Stone Age and live in a cave, to be honest with you, sometimes. But
where you can't access the information that
I want my house to be private, you know. I want my life to be private. I don't like leaving these cookies everywhere. I don't like every time I use my bank card or every time I Google something, it's all linked to my IP address. So everything is catalogued, and it's not that anybody's watching me or I'm of importance to anyone, but I think my life should be private, and I think I should be able to do that. So when I see this agenda that's being pushed out off the back of global warming, and then convenience of having a smart house and having these hive systems, it's very convenient. They're pretty cool now, there's no doubt about that. But they intend to blame us for global warming, me and you, not the big industries that are fucking chucking out all this desperate fumes and pollutants the whole time. They're going to blame us for it because we're the ones that are basically using too much energy. We're being wasteful. So eventually they want us to all have houses that will be smart enough to detect how much things are being used, dishwashers, washing machines, all that stuff. That will all go through a smart system which sends out signals to the base every 10-15 seconds or something like that. It's constantly updating the data. How many units are being used. But if you, say, leave a house and you leave a light on unnecessarily, you know, and you're gone for 2 hours, the house will detect that you are wasteful with your energy, and it'll log that into a system. You'll be penalised in some way, shape or form for being wasteful, and then because it'll probably be a digital currency of some sort, there'll be no cash, it'll just basically come out via revenue, via your digital account, whatever it is.
That's a pessimistic way of looking at it, though.
Yeah, I know.
Because the flip side of that is that exact same scenario, only instead of you being billed for your waste of energy, something automatically switches the light off and you don't end up with shares in the ESB, as my dad used to say. For leaving your lights on. Yeah.
And like that's the thing about it. At times I can seem like I'm anti-tech, you know, and I'm really not. Like there's some unbelievably important evolutions happen in the tech industry, you know, like there's some brilliant things happen and they can be a massive benefit to us moving forward. But I don't think that I do believe there's a ruling class, and I do believe they have nefarious intentions. I really do, you know.
Okay, well, just on the ruling class and just the whole global warming thing.
Yeah.
Like carbon taxes and restrictions on heat loss and all the regulation in relation to saving energy, like none of that really benefits big industry, to say the least.
No.
Like, I know myself as a business owner, I find that kind of scary. I find that as the government just meddling too much in my affairs.
Yeah.
To a degree. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm in favour of reducing my carbon footprint, and if I can save money in the process.
But it's making it harder for you to make a few pound.
It's not really, though, because without the push on renewable, not even renewable energy, but without the push towards reducing the consumption of electricity in products. So let's say LED lighting, say. I don't think LED lighting would have caught on, at least not to the same degree, if it wasn't for the global warming and energy crisis that we have.
Yeah.
And my business couldn't exist without LED lighting.
Right, yeah.
So with every kind of advancement and every leap in our technology, you create new industries as well as get rid of old industries.
Yeah.
And the powers that be don't want the old industries to go anywhere, because the old industries is where they have all their money. So
Exactly, yeah.
they're
The petrodollar
terrified of
and the oil, yeah.
Yeah, so they're all terrified. Like the petrodollar, like that industry doesn't want
Renewable
windmills
energy.
and fucking wave
And it's
technology.
funny because at the moment you can see, I don't know if you've noticed it in the news or anything like that, that they're starting to kind of make Saudi Arabia seem like they're becoming more westernized in their ways, you know, and they're letting women not go around now, not wear masks and get driver's licenses. And I think they were the
Very
first ones to,
progressive.
yeah, very progressive, you know, but they're still, at the same time, they're still beheading people in a stadium every day, you know. But like, they are starting to invest in renewables because they can see this, you know.
Of course they are, yeah.
And then because they were so tyrannical in their nature, the way they cooperated with the likes of America and Israel and all that, and they've basically held the control over the world, because that's what basically set the value for the petrodollar, and that was what we all based our economies on, you know.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
The price of oil dictates the price of everything else.
Yeah. And it was funny, I actually read a story a while ago. Now this could be off the mark now. I don't know where I read this. I have to be very careful. So that's what I was thinking coming to this, is like I go on mad tangents, you know, and like you'd there's certain things you just wouldn't talk to people on a general basis about, you know.
Well, I tell you what, we said we'd do something before we started recording, and we never did it. We never threw in our little disclaimer.
Oh yes.
So this might be an apt time to just dump that in there.
Yeah.
So how would you frame that, say?
Oh Jesus! Everything I say could be argued. It could be argued, apart from what Declan Walker's doing, but what I'm about to say could be argued. But there was something about like the Venezuelan revolution of sorts. So you had Chavez, and they had the revolution of sorts over the last, it was about 10 years ago or 12 years ago, where they basically were separating themselves. They were based on their own economy, on their oil reserves, which they had vast amounts of.
Okay.
And it was a socialist kind of movement, and it was very successful. Now Venezuela at the moment is in turmoil, but I think the people have seen past Western interference into trying to make them be annoyed with their government because sanctions were coming in. But what I seen happened was that supposedly the Americans or the Israelis in some way interfered and told the Saudi Arabians to lower the price of their oil. Saudis weren't too happy about that, but they lowered it anyway because they needed to do that in order to feck up Venezuela's economy, which was based solely on their oil reserves, which isn't a great thing, but because their oil reserves were so vast, their economy was booming and everything was going good. They were getting free healthcare and they're building loads of houses. They were looking after people. But once the oil was dropped, the whole market dropped. So the value of their nation as a whole basically dropped with that, you know?
Yes.
And so there's these funny ways that the West can interfere diplomatically, you know, by using, like, sanctions are lethal things, you know. They can destroy, they can cripple countries, you know.
And when you say the West, you mean
I
the
mean,
States?
Well, the United States. And like I used to hold the United States in such contempt, because a big eye opener for me, when I decided I wanted to know more about the world, you know, like up until my late 20s, I was just like I'm just a typical normal Egypt, you know, Jack the lad, act the maggot the whole time. Didn't really want to know much about everything. Ignorance was bliss for me, and kind of just socially adapt. Was able to fit in with people. Great crack, drink loads, you know. That was kind of, I just ticked all the boxes for years, and I kind of got bored with it. And then because I had kids, I felt like I'd have discussions with my older sister. My older sister's absolutely fantastic, you know. And my younger sister. My family are great. I'm very lucky. I come from a good family. We all disagree massively on things, you know. We don't have the same viewpoints on things. And Martha works. She works in banking systems. She helps people, basically countries who are getting banking up to a standard of the rest of us. They need to get the data loaded into the computers and be taught how to use the equipment and use all the programs.
Be modernised.
Yeah, so she doesn't work directly for the banks. It's kind of, but like Martha done very well. She went to college, and I always would really look to her for advice, you know, and she's a well-read, really learned girl. But when it came to views in the world, like watching, let's say, Troker video or an ad on telly, it set me off. Like I was saying, like why not being selfish? I paid to all them charities for years, to be honest with you, but like €5 can help save this little child's life. Like, why are they depending on my €5 to save this little child's life? And I couldn't understand why these things happen in the world. And I'd always be questioning, and without much information and without the vocabulary to maybe define what it was I was trying to say, you know.
Yeah, to articulate your thoughts.
Yeah, to articulate my thoughts. I hadn't got the ability to, you know. So I can remember when I decided then I wanted to read and wanted to learn to be able to express myself better, I started reading a couple of books, you know. And I read a good few books in a short space of time, and then I haven't read any since, because I went through a stage where I thought, geez, they rightly fucked my head up, all that stuff, you know. But like enlightenment, it's a pretty self-destructive process, you know. But I read, one of the first books I read was Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, and it's all about how America was created, you know. And it's a very, very good book. It's a very hard-hitting book, but it's great insight into what happened to natives, you know, and what we did when we went over there, and we were very greedy in our intentions, you know. And it's a very young country, you know, and now we look to that country, and we basically base all Western culture upon this very young country, which was basically founded on mass genocide, you know, one of the biggest genocides in history. But when I read that book, it really opened my eyes to America and made me very angry, you know. I used to think Lincoln was like this great lad, you know, and like at times in the book it doesn't completely paint him bad, but it gives you great insight into how words on paper can work and how they can convince people that they have power, you know.
Well, there's a great saying surrounding that, history is written by the winners.
Yeah, that's it. The victors are always, they're the survivors, really, and they're the ones that will write it down. Like, even look at our history here, you know. Like, I used to have that animosity towards the America as a whole, but now I actually worry for America, because I think as I go on and as I learn more about how the whole thing is working, I realise America might have been set up for a fall, you know. Ever since JFK's time, it's been infiltrated. There's like a bad group of people that are running it, and like I think John F. Kennedy tried to warn us of it, you know, in his Secret Society speech. Like he had some pretty astute things to say, and a lot of people say they try and relate him to the mafia and that he wasn't a great fella by any means. But you look at some of the things he said and he done. He spoke about the Federal Reserve, how they were basically manipulating the country and trying to basically enslave them in debt, you know. And he wanted to shut it down. That was one of the things he wanted to do. But now when I look at it now, I think looking at Trump, looking at the whole facade that's going on now, Hillary and Trump, like, what a choice between two absolute horrible, horrific people, you know. And that's what the Americans are. How many million live in America? Like
300 plus. 300
plus, and you have them two people as the
out of a pool of 300 plus million people. Yeah, that's the best.
And there's amazing people in America.
Of course, there is.
You know what I mean? You feel so sorry for them because they have to deal with all this corruption and like every single senator in America is committing an act of treason once they sign the AIPAC treaty. You know, every single one of them has to sign an AIPAC treaty before they walk into the Senate.
I'm sorry, what is an AIPAC treaty?
It's basically, the AIPAC treaty is you swear allegiance to a foreign nation, and that nation is Israel. And the second you get elected, there was a great woman, Christina McKinney, or Cynthia McKinney, I think it was. And she kind of whistleblowed on it. I think everyone else just signs the AIPAC treaty because they're delighted they got the gig, you know.
Yeah, say nothing.
They just say nothing, you know, and they just go along with it. And they probably don't think about it, because I don't think these, like some people that would be in my level of thinking with conspiracies and that, like they just think everybody's bad, you know. The cops are all in on it, you know. The politicians are all in on it. Everyone's in on it. It's like this big conspiracy, and everyone's a shadow man pulling strings and laughing in the background. And it's not like that. A lot of people get in there with good intentions, you know, and they actually do want to do something, but when they're in there they can do feck all because the system controls what they do, you know. But like she says that when she got the gig, she was literally within 2 hours, there was men come into the office and they says, you have to sign this AIPAC pledge. And she was like, and what is it? Like, and she looked into it and it was basically, she goes, I can't sign that. That's swearing allegiance to a foreign power, which is Israel. That's treasonary by default, you know. So that's the way it is in America. Like, America is controlled by this hidden hand, you know, that doesn't have America's intentions at heart. That has this little country in the Middle East they created off the Balfour Declaration, you know, and they have a committing genocide ever since, you know. It's like it's a mass concentration camp, you know, and the irony of it, because that was created in order to let the Jews escape Nazis, you know, persecution themselves. So you just see the power, the money. Like, I think it's 4 million per day gets floated into Israel from the American exchequer, you know, from all the taxpayers in America. Like, there's some money goes into that country, and when you look at it and you see the destabilization that's happened all around it in the Middle East, like, it's been a perfect little hunting ground to go out and cause havoc in all the neighbouring countries. And I think that America has been basically, it's been undermined, and the likes of Trump going into office, like, it turns it into a reality show. People really, and like, up until Trump, I was like, people need to realise how much of a reality show America is, how theatrical the whole political system is in the Western world. It really is. But watching what happened with Trump, now I'm starting to realise, I thought Clinton was going to be the one for the job, but looking at it now, it seems that it's all just a distraction. It's all just a distraction, and to me personally, distraction is from the smart system. I think the smart system is the ultimate. It's the ultimate tyranny, you know. It's the ultimate tyranny. Like, you look at the likes of the old movies. Like, I actually went on a binge last week and I watched 1984, and I've read the books, but 1984 and
George Orwell.
Yeah, and Brazil. Did you ever see Brazil?
What? Sorry, a movie called Brazil.
A movie called Brazil. Yeah,
Can't say I have.
I
No.
don't know who directed it now, but it's very interesting. It's like a future dystopia, but it was done back in the early 80s, you know. But it's Robert De Niro is in it, and I can't remember the other actor. But it's very dark, it's very extreme, but like, it talks about this future where, like, your house is basically watches you everything you do. It's kind of like 1984 as well. Like, everything's there, and then you have the villains, you know, you have the Russians and the Americans, which we have today. Like, we have all these depictions of this setup, which, when you step back from the fiction and you kind of look at the reality we're living in, it's very similar, you know. Like, they need to play in our fears in order for us to feel like we need someone. Like, it was Plato. I think Plato says, when the tyrant has disposed of all enemies by conquest or treaty, he's always looking for some criminal or other, so that people will think, or some kind of adversary or other, so that people will feel that they require a leader, you know. It makes sense.
Another, I only spoke to this with Anthony Murphy there the other day, this idea of the other.
Yeah.
People that aren't like you and are demonised, basically. And in what you're saying there is, we need to be led in order to fight this other. Is it?
Yeah, well, that's it. And that's the big problem, being led, you know. Like, that's why people said to me for years, why don't you get into politics, Coogan? I'm like, who am I to lead anybody? You know, I have opinions and I'll share them, and I'm not afraid to share them for fear of not being fitting in with the status quo properly, you know. But I'm I'm not that grown. I wish I could grow a bit more, to be honest with you. But I'm an adult, you know. And as I seen that, I was just talking about that Jordan B. Peterson. I hadn't been acquainted with him until I seen that interview on Channel 4, and like, he says we're all just adult babies, you know. This is what we are.
Man babies.
Babies.
Not all of us, but yeah.
Well, that's what you're saying, like, a general proportion of us, you know. And like, it really rang true with me, because we kind of are. And I love having the crack. And I love having the banter, you know. And we can all do our, I don't know, Seth Rogen, Adam Sandler. Like, it seems like we're very impressionable, and like, movies and TV and all that are really, they can impress upon us certain ways to be, and what's funny and what's not, and what's popular and what's not, you know. When you look at the Ice Bucket Challenge or all these different things, like, what's up and all that, remember, you know, like, these things just catch on. And like, I used to think they were really cool, but now I kind of look and I kind of go, on one hand, it's really cool because it proves how interconnected we can be and how quick this new internet world brings us together and gets things to grow and ferment, you know. But they all seem to be trivial, senseless, pointless things, you know. They're fun, but if we could only do the same kind of collective awakening and all unify,
to eradicate world poverty or homelessness,
you know?
or fucking hell, it's not as if we're stuck for things to change.
And like, you look at, or even this country, like I can't, like, to get into politics, I think you need to be sociopathic in some kind of a way, because you need to feel like you can lead. You have a right to lead people. Like, none of us have a right to lead anybody. We all have to lead ourselves, you know. And that's what we're kind of all on a quest for discovery. Like, like I seen there, I had to listen to what yourself and Ivor talked about, and I only got to listen to the first hour there this morning. I'm after figuring out how to get your Podomatics to load up, and they're loading up pretty good now, so I'm going to load them all up, Fran, and I'm going to be listening to everything, you know. But listen to Ivan, it was deep, you know. He's really, really, really astute, his observations and how he expresses himself and what he's experienced, you know. And like that's what we're all on this discovery, and I think that's what we're supposed to be doing as adults. I don't think we're meant to just try and find the easy life, you know, and
or be led anywhere.
Or be led. We shouldn't be led anywhere.
Well, hence the name. Off the lead.
Off the lead, yeah. Like I was going to say to you when they come in, now just keep a hold on that lead. And every now and again give it a yank, you know. You'll hear me. But that's the problem, isn't it? We're all looking to be led. Like, we're all looking to Trump. We're all looking to Hillary, you know. Like everyone's looking to this one individual who have no characteristics of decency in them whatsoever. Like their lives have proven it, you know.
Put it this way, even if, not say Trump, but let's say the leader of America, even if they were just the perfect statesman, like the perfect person, that if you could cook them up in an oven and that they would just be the penultimate leader of men.
Yeah.
How the fuck are you supposed to govern 300 million people? It's fucking preposterous, really.
It's insane.
The idea that you would have a guy at the top of the pile.
Yeah.
That holds that much power is ridiculous.
And it's crazy to think we've came to that, you know, after all these years and years and years, you know, of supposed democracy. You'd imagine it would become more refined, you know, like even the likes of, like when we're paying our taxes now, like none of our taxes, like they basically don't go to the transport or education. They're going to pay off a tiny bit of interest off infinite debt that we'll never pay, you know. And everything we're doing now, it's all based on government bonds every year. Like everything, we're just constantly going into more and more debt. Like you hear these conversations about the economy is on the up, you know. The economy on the up is completely false, and all we're doing is passing the buck to our kids, you know. Like we seen what happened in 2007, 2008, whenever that was. Like we seen then, only a few years ago, that Lenin was pressurised by Trichet, that Trichet sent him the letter and basically warned him, if you don't agree to this bailout, there'll be no money in the banks for anyone the next day, you know. And it was on letter, and it came out, and it was kind of discussed for a little while, for a day or two, and then passed over. So, like, we have this tyranny that's the EU, I think. And anything where power is centralised, like the ECB or Federal Reserve or EU, anything like this is what the ruling class want. This is what they need, you know, because if you have individual, independent, sovereign nations basically ascertaining their own way of enforcing policies, and not that I like any policy, I don't think any policy should be enforced anywhere, but like if they have control over that, they're all independent, you can't control that, you know.
But before a lot of those organisations that you mentioned were put in place, all those sovereign independent states were fucking killing each other. Not all of them, obviously, but I mean, it's not as if, you know, wars are a new thing. On the contrary, I mean, Europe has been at war with itself forever, up until essentially the formation of the EU. Could you not argue? Now again, my European politics is
as I was saying to you earlier, like I have opinions on everything. I'm an expert on nothing, you know. Like I kind of touched off a lot of things, but like the likes of, like the wars have raged long before, and people would say that the wars have receded a bit since the EU was formed, but like I don't know. Like the EU, when you think of France and Germany and England and these countries within the EU have kind of helped America, and they've still been spreading their imperialistic kind of domain across the world, you know. So they've been assisted by their partner, which is the EU. Like the EU as a whole, as independent nations are to be able to govern themselves. Like we elect, let's say, whoever's going to be the next politician in Ireland, the Taoiseach, it's going to be Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, Sinn Féin are on the rise, but you wouldn't know who it's going to be, like, but it doesn't matter though. It doesn't matter who it's going to be, and that's why at times I wonder. Like I like the romantic thought that Sinn Féin disbanded its weapons and it fought for the independence of Ireland, this struggle, and it became political and bureaucratic, and it ends up becoming little after 100 years of the centenary. It becomes the leading party of the country, democratically elected, with no guns, no arms. It's a nice thought. But to me, there's something hypocritical about what the Sinn Féin people go with, and maybe they're being really smart. Maybe they are, because they're a clever group. Like Jerry Adams, whatever people want to think of him, he's a very intelligent man, you know. And he'd have foresight, and they would have fought in different ways than most other politicians would have fought, you know. They literally put their lives in the line at times, you know. Whether they done terrible things, they done terrible things, but we all do terrible things maybe when we're faced with terrible things, you know. You just don't know till you're in that position. But they support the EU, you know, and they want to be part of the EU. So for me, if you truly want to be an independent Ireland and you want to have the control to govern your people, you know, you can't do that as a member of the EU, because you have these unelected, unnamed people, in most cases in Brussels, who basically enforce all the policies. And when you look at what happens when you're a member of the EU, like, people blamed Fianna Fáil when we basically hit the wall and the big collapse came. But like, at the same time, in tandem, Spain and Portugal and Italy and all these other countries, Iceland, they all collapsed as well, and Fianna Fáil wasn't running them countries. So it kind of bugged me at the time. Everyone was blaming Fianna Fáil, but if Fine Gael were in power, they would have done the fucking same thing.
We blamed who was in power.
Yeah, and if Sinn Féin were in power, they probably would have done the same thing.
Of course,
you know?
Of course they would.
Because they didn't know, they weren't experts, they didn't have any understanding of banking, they didn't know what was going on, so they're taking advice, just like all our government ministers now take advice from people in Brussels. And the people in Brussels who aren't elected, who we don't elect, doesn't matter if our local representative fills all the potholes and fixes all the street lights and puts up fences there on the road to keep kids safe, the locals will vote for that person on that meaning. But that person represents a party, and that party is under a whip system anyway. So realistically, that individual that's in your local, no matter what he thinks really honestly or believes, if his party says something different, he has to toe the line with that. And that party is always going to be dictated to by their hierarchy who are in Brussels. And Brussels are constantly sneaking in. Like, I've seen like the likes of the transport, was it the bus Éireann or the Lewis, the train men last year, they're all striking. You know, like, there's our medical system, the health system is kind of falling apart, people on waiting lists, all this kind of stuff. The education system, people are giving out, teachers are getting too much holidays, and there are not enough teachers now to teach Spanish and all these different languages. But like, the EU creates policies. It advises all these nations and the leading parties of these countries to enforce policies, because they're better for the bigger picture, you know. But when they enforce them policies subtly, but inadvertently, I think purposefully, but they subtly undermine all these local services. So while we're getting loans and bonds increasing every year to try and sustain this false economy that's supposedly on the up the whole time, while we're doing that, you see all these services are being undermined at the same time. So in the media, it grows. It's a slow burning process, but they work over time in these things. Like, I think they've discovered how the human psyche works a long time ago. And when they put the system on us, they've been using it slowly but surely to kind of chisel away at what it is to be human, you know, and what it is to be part of a family and all these kind of things, you know.
You said they 5 or 6 times there within a sentence.
Yeah, well, they would be the boys in Brussels, who are basically the lads in Brussels, the unelected leaders that are there. They have an awful hold over all these member state countries.
And
you
are
know?
doing that to what end? To feather their own nest?
Well, like, when you look at the ECB, we're on massive loans. So what they done after every collapse, basically, we have a big bailout that has to come along. So if we can pay back the bailout, which we can't, and none of the countries are expected to pay them back anyway, from what I can see. But if we accept the bailout, we have to pay back the loans we get to try and sustain our false economy at interest again. So the debt just gets deeper and deeper. So what we do then, if we can't afford to pay back these debts, governments in power will be asked, well, we'll take over your water, let's say, for instance. Like, our Irish water thing was advised to our government to be enforced and put in by the IMF. So the IMF isn't elected by anybody here in this country, but they're working on behalf of a bigger picture. Like I know you'd say, when I say they, at times, whatever topic I'm talking about, it will be the hierarchy in that structure there. So there is unelected officials in Brussels who do dictate, you know. And then the IMF, we had the trike over here, and they were telling us basically how we could better run our country. And one of their suggestions was to basically go with this Irish water thing, and that they wanted a semi-public body, which was really just laying the grounds for an eventual privatised Irish water supply. in a country where it rains the whole time, and in a world where water will be the new gold in about 10, 20 years, you know. It's a very valuable commodity in this country. Probably could be our most valuable resource so many years down the line, because we could be selling it off to all these countries which are drought-ridden, you know. Like the likes of California is gone now. There's nearly no water left in the place. But like, that's what I see them doing. I can see them, they're undermining these services, and when we can't afford to pay back loans, we basically let them take over these public services. So what I see in my dystopian vision of the future is, I see basically we be paying taxes for nothing other than just paying the interest off debt, and then we be paying extra for all these other services, because we already pay massive fees for education. You already pay extra money for your health visits and all that stuff. You already pay for your train and your bus journeys and all these things. So all these things that were initially, as part of a democratic republic, meant to be funded by the tax monies of the people who are working hard in that country, they'll eventually be gone, because we keep on getting loans, and they'll be undermined as well, because the media is all part of this big conglomerate, you know. Like, I see every country as just they're different corporations within a big massive multinational corporation, and every Taoiseach and leader of every country is just the CEO of that country. And if Sinn Féin get into power, doesn't matter whether they get into power or not, they basically have to uphold the agreements and the contracts that the previous government's done to them, because it's all corporate at the end of the day, you know. It's all corporate. So the Sinn Féin boys and girls, I don't know, they could be going cute about it, because they know that Northern Ireland want to remain part of the EU. So maybe this is their way of getting a full republic, you know. So maybe they're just saying, I don't know, I'd love to think they're just saying that the EU is cool, yeah, we like the EU and all that stuff, because to me it just seems hypocritical, because you have no independence of thought or action or policy making or governing at all, you know.
And what would make Sinn Féin any different than every other leader of a country if they were the leader of this country?
I don't think there's any difference. I think there's an element of, I don't know, like, I love the idea of it, you know, and there's some really good people involved in Sinn Féin, and they're definitely going to progress now with Jerry gone, you know. They are, because a lot of people just kind of associate them with that criminality they say that Jerry is associated with. So I think with Mary Luna and that, and they're very progressive in their thinking, you know. They tick a lot of boxes. I think a lot of people, and like, they have good people like Doherty, and there's some great heads, Owen O'Brien and Matt Carty, local lad there. Like, they're good speakers, they're intelligent men. I seen Matt Carty challenge that T-tip, and there was no one else challenging it, which was very good, you know. He made a good argument of it, but I don't think no one's going to make any difference. Like we had no government here for, what was it, 3 or 4 months, a few years ago. We had no government.
Yeah.
And like in America there, only 3 weeks ago, they had no government for like a week or two. No government. But everything still ran. Do you know what I mean? The buses still went, the schools still ran. Like, we don't need government. We need some kind of a central administrative body, but we don't need government. And government, by default, is the cause of all the woes in the world, as far as I'm concerned, you know. Like, even take the word apart, you know, there's all this word play, this word magic, like governmente, it all derives from Latin. Like, mente is mind, and governe is control, you know. So mind control comes from the name government, you know. Like, there's so much. I think we've been born into a massive deception, I really do. And I think that, like you said it before, I think the first time I seen you advertising this podcast, like, I never go looking on pages, but when it came up in my newsfeed, I seen a couple of your posts, you know.
Yeah.
But the first one, I thought, this is cool. I like the thoughts of this, you know. But you're saying, speaking about the domestication of our species, like you must believe yourself. You do believe yourself that we are being domesticated. We've been farmed in some way, shape, or form.
I don't think that we have been domesticated. I think we've become domesticated. The difference being, I don't think there's anybody domesticating us.
Right, yeah.
I don't.
Okay.
I wouldn't use the terminology of they.
Yeah.
As much as you have even already just listening to you speak there.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah.
But the tagline of sorts for the podcast, the name is obviously Off the Lead. The idea being, like, you don't want to be like a dog on the lead, being told where to go, what to eat, what to do.
Yeah.
You have to have your own fucking autonomy. So
yeah.
And there's a good analogy there with a dog that's off the lead. Like, if you close your eyes and think in your mind's eye of a dog off the lead, it's not a dog lying down. It's a dog fucking jumping around,
yeah,
or flying.
mental,
it's off the lead. It's free.
Yeah,
you know. And
yeah.
I feel that we've lost our autonomy. become domesticated as opposed to somebody has domesticated us.
Forged into that, yeah.
So this whole platform is a way for me to push back against that, and it's not that I saw it in other people. I saw it in other people first, admittedly. I saw other people as being domesticated, and I didn't have the introspection to see it in myself. But then the more I started talking about it, the more I started realising that I'm as much part of the problem as kind of everybody else.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of the premise of the platform. The new logo that I'm making is the same logo with Off the Lead written across the top, but instead of provoking conversations in the bottom, it's going to be Off the Lead, not just a podcast, because I view this very much as a movement of sorts.
Yeah.
So the tagline to go along with that logo is going to be, as it stands at least, provoking conversations and initiating change. Now, provoking conversations kind of works both ways. This is a provoking conversation.
Yeah.
But it will also provoke conversations.
Yeah. I like where you're going with it, yeah.
And the whole initiating change thing is what I want to kind of get back to now. We've had a somewhat provoking conversation and are hopefully provoking conversations. But in relation to initiating change, like what can we do? Like,
yeah, the
put it this
solution.
way, I'm doing this, okay? But what can other people do? Because not everybody's going to set up a podcast or have a platform. Not everyone's going to be as articulate as me or have the autonomy that I have, because I don't have a boss that I'm afraid of pissing off. I've my own business, I've my own little thing going, and I'm a lot freer than other people, even from a timeline, because of the nature of my business. Like, I made a delivery this morning at 4 o'clock in the morning, which allows me to have this conversation with you during the middle of the day. Now, granted, you work shift work, so you're kind of off now, but for the most part...
Appreciate that, Fran. I actually feel a little bit bad now, to be honest with you.
How do you mean?
That was an early start.
Oh, no, I'm 7 days a week, 4 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, that's it, every morning,
yeah, every day.
Somebody.
Every day. But I try it for anybody listening, you know. If you've ever said the words that there's not enough, you don't have the time, stop saying that for a start and start saying there's not enough hours in the day. Because when you change from saying that there's not enough time to there's not enough hours in the day, you kind of say, well, maybe I didn't need that 11-hour kip last night.
Right,
or maybe I shouldn't have stayed up till 12 o'clock at night watching 4 or 5 hours of TV. You have the fucking time. And people with kids get that more than most. Like,
big time,
You've what, 4 kids, is it?
4 kids, yeah.
You've probably heard people without kids saying that they do this, but they don't have the time. And
I don't understand that at all. I don't understand it, you know. There's so much time. That's why I was envious of Ivor there when he was heading off to Peru that time, because I wanted to join him, you know. And I was like, yes, we're going to do this. And I was like, no, can't afford it. Yeah. It's coming close to Christmas and all that, so yeah, it's like it's brilliant. Like, you're doing your bit, you know. You're doing something.
I'm lucky in a sense that I can.
Yeah, like I've tried. Like, I think anybody who gets into this kind of frame of mind, you feel like you're obliged to try and do something. You know,
it's incumbent on you, if you've come to the realisation that
something's wrong.
You have a reptilian government, or and I don't mean like, I mean, metaphorically speaking. But if you think that there's something rotten in the state of Denmark, it's incumbent on you to fucking do something about it.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think people lack a lot of courage, and again, that comes with domestication.
Yeah.
You don't want your pet to, you know, fight back basically when you have the size of the garden that it has. Do you know that kind of way?
Yeah.
So
that's a good analogy.
We're bred to be, you know, obedient and not to stick our head above the parapet.
And it starts at a very young age, you know, with all standing between the line and putting your hand up to speak. And
yes, and asking for permission to go to the toilet and all that jazz.
Yeah.
All that jazz.
And like, even the schools, like it's it's like wondering what to do. You know, I've seen so many people. I've been envious of people. Like, the most I've done was go to protests, and I done it twice, and it was the most. I never felt as less sovereign in my entire life as the time I was standing outside the gates of Leinster House, and I just seen some stiff just pulling down the blinds. You know, there was a clatter of us outside. Can't remember what we were protesting about. Can't even remember what we were protesting about, but I knew it wasn't for me. I knew this doesn't work, you know. It's been done for years and years and years. But then the Irish water thing came along, and people were out in the streets and done something. So,
but that was a mass movement.
It was a mass movement, yeah.
You know, that was a collective effort.
Like I seen the emergence of direct democracy a few years ago, and I really liked it because people were on about me to get into politics for a long time, and I was like, I can't. It goes against everything I stand for, because to me, government is the problem. You know, every time they write a law, they create a crime, as far as I'm concerned. You know, so they're creating crimes the whole time. They're creating them, and then they're putting words on paper and putting their name after it, and all of a sudden, them words mean that everyone in the fucking nation is obliged to obey them. Because if we don't, we're going to be punished or penalised. You know, to me, it's just. It's the perfect example of slavery, you know. That's what I see it as.
Well, the laws are. Look, I don't think that laws should be abolished. I think they have their purpose, but it's the threat that's behind them.
Yeah,
that's the kind of dangerous thing. It's that, you know, these are the rules, abide by them, and, you know, or else.
Yeah, and like that's not right. You know, it isn't right. You know, you shouldn't be forced or coerced. And like when you take law apart, like in Tara Mines. I work in Tara Mines, so that's another big hypocrisy of mine, because I'm raping Mother Earth while I'm fighting to protect her, you know. But like, it's a local job. My father worked there. It works for me, you know.
It's steady,
and it's there,
kids.
and it's there. It's not going to stop, you know. So I've got a job in there, and it does pain me sometimes, you know, when I'm up there and I'm having my shower and I can hear the blast at the end of shift. But there's good aspects to it, and one of the good aspects we have is that every summer they bring in students from whatever courses they're doing, and it's kind of some grant scheme through the government. They come in and they get paid really good money, and they work for the 3 months in the summer. So every summer, my job, I'm basically the van man, you know. But every summer we have a student comes in, and he'd be with me for the summer for the 2 months to 3 months, and we'd be spinning around. So we've had historians, scientists, accountant. Who else have we got? A fella doing movies in a movie college, and a barrister. And the year we had the barrister, it was kind of timely, because I was trying to look into law and the matrix of law and how law worked and what it was all based on and how you can challenge it. And I was really interested in the fact that all law is derived from natural law. So natural law is the one law, realistically. There is only one law, and that comes into the civil arena as well. But natural law is basically to do no harm to anyone else. And outside of that, that's the only human law really there. And if you don't breach that law, you haven't really breached any law, because the rest aren't really laws. It aren't law, so to speak. They're laws in inverted commas, like legislation, acts, statutes. You know, they're words written on paper by a minister at some stage or another, signed by that minister. And then all of a sudden, that applies to every person in the country, you know. And if you don't obey the words written on that paper, and whether it's a road traffic act or whatever it is, and I know these things work well and they stop people from speeding and all these things, so I'm not trying to completely say the whole thing is a sham, but it's just to try and highlight that law is derived from natural law, and that everything else outside of that is kind of subverting the original context of it. It's kind of taken away from the fact that if we just all acknowledged and respected natural law, a lot of the laws that are written couldn't even be written, because some of them are very infringing on people's rights, you know. Some of them are very, very dominating. So
you look at the laws that we have in relation to drugs, for a start.
Yeah, well, that's true, yeah, because they are like I think in America, like the biggest amount of people in prison are drug dealers, you know, and the people are caught with small amounts in a lot of cases. But then you look at the American prison system, is completely private, so it's a massive industry. And they're generating money, so it's came to a state in that country where the war on drugs is creating massive traffic into these prisons, which is making massive money for certain people. So there's vested interest to keep this war on drugs happening, you know.
The war on drugs is probably it's up there the biggest industries in America.
Yeah.
Maybe even worldwide.
Yeah.
Because in order to put people in prison, you obviously need the prisons themselves, and that there's a whole back end industry there. All these guys have to be fed, you know. The plates have to be washed. They have to be put there. They have to be caught by someone. So I mean, what percentage of your average cop in America's time is dedicated towards dealing with drug-related?
Yeah, a lot of it.
You know, that kind of way.
All, and
even when you look at the addiction, then a further step back, a lot of the crimes, it might be a burglary, which isn't a drug crime, say, but if you're burgling someone's house to feed your drug habit, it is effectively a drug crime.
Yeah.
So I'm with you on this, and I'm with you on the majority of the things that you've said, being perfectly honest with you.
Yeah.
Now, there are elements that I wouldn't necessarily agree with you on, but
Well, that's
I
cool,
wouldn't
yeah.
get bogged down in any of that. At least not yet.
But I think it's good. It's good to bang heads, because I learn more from people who disagree with me than people who agree with me. I really do, and you constantly see things in a different light, And I'd stand my ground if I'm steadfast in something and I really believe it. But a lot of the stuff I could talk about, it could be speculative as well. It's based on hypothesis a lot of the time, because you're looking back in history and you're looking at certain things that happen. Like even when you look to like the war on drugs, and you see the intertwining connections with the likes of Bill Clinton and that back in the day when they kind of announced this war on drugs. It was him and Reagan or something, wasn't it? Or
Reagan more so, I think.
Reagan more so, yeah. Trying to see now. So you get mixed up and stuff like that. I'd probably best not to talk about stuff like that. But I remember with the barrister in Tara Mines that time, trainee barrister. Like I mentioned it to him about the natural law thing, and he says that it's interesting I said it because they were given a hypothetical scenario, and they were kind of all pitching against each other to try and figure out what way would you approach it in a courtroom. So the scenario was you're in a car on your own, you've no seatbelt on, the guards pull you over. The law states you're meant to wear a seatbelt, but the person in the car says that they didn't want to wear it. There's no threat to any other life. There's no other passengers in the car. The only person's life that was a threat was their own life, and they're an eager for not wearing it, but it was their choice not to wear it. There was no possible harm that could be caused to anybody else, and you have total autonomy over your own body. So that was the argument in court, and they were asked how would they challenge it, how would they figure out a way around it to be able to penalise them and be able to punish the person, So I see there, like the universities and stuff, I think like there's a lot of real aspiring, intelligent young people come through the universities, and I think they're like a breeding ground for ideas to be stolen a lot of the time. That's what I see it. It just dawned on me that about a year or two ago, and at that time when I was talking to the student I was working with at the time, but I was thinking that like you could be putting up scenarios to young, aspiring, ambitious students, and they want to be cleverer than the other students in the class, and they want to get higher grades, and they want to be seen by the lecturers being, do you know what I mean, having good ideas, and good approach, and it's going to work them in their favour going down the line. But you have all these really, really clever young people, and they're coming up with ideas and ways to maybe navigate around natural law in order to be able to find ways. And I think a lot of these situations can be derived. A lot of angles and ideas can be basically stolen from students that are in schools. They come up with some great ideas, probably, you'd imagine. But I was just thinking of that particular scenario he painted to me, and I was thinking on a bigger scale. Like you can go into anything, lecturers could be there, they could be limited enough, they're working on the same thing for years, and they throw out ideas to people, and it's not all nefarious now. The kids have come up with some brilliant ideas, but you'd imagine that in universities and colleges there's a lot of ideas there that people come up with that could like kind of set the stall for what's to come down the line, new perspectives and things like that.
So you've lost me there slightly now on what's been stolen.
Yeah, well, like what I was thinking with with that situation with the student, if someone come up with an idea, let's say the courts couldn't figure out a way, someone had thrown that up in court, that argument, right? I had no seatbelt on, but there was no threat to any other life. I wasn't in breach of natural law, say. So they have to find a way to connect it to natural law because there had to have been a threat to someone. But if there hasn't been a way found out in the courts how to do it, throw it out to all the colleges and see if any of these students come up with an answer, Okay. That's what I was thinking,
Okay, now I'm with you.
Yeah.
What do you feel, just in keeping with that specific example, what's your thoughts on that? Like, should you be allowed to drive down the road without your seatbelt?
Oh yeah, like if you wanted to be stupid enough to drive down the road without your seatbelt, but like it's a choice you have because there's no threat to any other life.
Well, there might be threat to any other life, but presumably the argument for it is that you're liable to need emergency services, or at least infinitely more likely to require the use of emergency services.
So you could put strain on the services.
That'd be one thing.
You got it, and you're not even in the college, Fran. So like you're after getting it. Because I remember sitting there and I was saying, like, how would you go about it? And he was thinking about it, and I was thinking about it. It says, no, it's a good argument, from a natural law perspective, because you're not harming anyone. But you could you could say that it's going to put strain on the services, and then you're punishable for that alone, you know. But like it's just it was an interesting topic.
Well, I love the idea of the natural law. I'm not familiar with that. That's a rabbit hole I must go down.
Yeah, because he was saying at the time, see, there was natural law is the basis of all law. So it's basically, you can't do any harm to anybody intentionally. You can't kill anybody, hit anybody over the head with a stick, rape, any of these things. If you intentionally cause harm to another human being, you've breached natural law. So if you basically apply that law across the board, the world would be a grand place, you know. And if you actually enforced it on those reasons alone. But like, you have so many people clogging up the prison system and the judicial system for misdemeanors and maybe speeding fines and parking tickets unpaid and things like that, you know.
Look, that system is set up. I mean, I don't think it's really debatable. That system is set up to almost victimise the weakest in our society, because you get a fine that you can't pay, so you don't pay it.
Yeah.
So they increase the fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know that kind of way?
Like, they're actually, do you know the way the Queen, who's the prince, who's Harry marrying, someone's marrying someone?
Clear that, I'm out of that loop.
Yeah, well, they're getting married anyhow. One of the boys, it's either Harry or William I think it is getting married, and they're getting married somewhere in England.
Right.
But I seen last week that, like, there's homeless people in that town. I can't remember where the fuck it is. There's homeless people in the town, but they've officially created a law now and they said it's illegal
to be homeless,
to have sleeping bags on the streets, and they're getting fines of £100 sterling, you know. So they're fining homeless people £100 sterling, you know, not to sleep on the road in case it ruins the image of the royal family. It's just and they're the biggest welfare spongers on the planet, you know.
The royal family.
Oh yeah, so they're living totally off the taxes of the people. It's shocking.
Don't mind me, lad. I'm just gonna stick on a bit of heat in here.
Yeah, no bother. I love your little pod now, I have to say. It's really cool.
The inverted commas studio.
The studio, yeah. She's cool now.
Look, it does the job. And again, having the likes of this, not everybody has this.
Yeah.
Do you know, kind of?
Yeah.
And I'm kind of lucky to have it in a sense, because this is where my business kind of originally started, literally on the back lawn of my house.
Yeah.
And thankfully I outgrew that, and I have my bigger facility down the road now. But it gives me the space to do this, because I obviously couldn't have this conversation with you inside with the young lad pulling out of me and herself making dinner or whatever else. Now, you know, he's in crash and she's in work, but typically people come in the evenings, so they would be at home. So again, not everyone has the means to do what I'm doing, and I'm very grateful for what I have, you know.
Yeah.
But which kind of brings me back nicely to what I kind of half posited to you there earlier. The second half of the slogan being initiating change.
Yeah.
So I'm afraid of this conversation being very...
talk about all the negatives, but
yeah.
no solutions, yeah.
Yes.
That's the important thing, because a lot of what's out there is offering no solutions, you know.
It's just fucking mudslinging.
But there's a lot of things. See, there's things I've attached over the years. There was like this big declaration, 2013 or something, the One People's Public Trust, where these people trying to figure out the system, and they figured out that the whole law system is under UCC law, Uniform Commercial Code, and that they're after cracking the system and they're after rendering it derelict. So there was no laws, there was nothing that was upheld. And I remember getting sucked in, because at the time I was still pretty naive, you know. I was getting
so you went away, or what was this?
This is back 6 years ago, One People's Public Trust. And it was being sold as the saviour, the bastion of freedom from the system, the shackles of the system. And it basically was going to render all laws derelict. It was going to render the economic system derelict, and it was going to put like $1 million into every one of our bank accounts, you know.
And so, this was what, a proposed new party, or?
No, it was just it was a couple of people. I think it was a girl and two fellas, and they had studied extensively, and they challenged in the American courts the system, the UCC system, under them laws, Uniform Commercial Code. But anyway, it was a misnomer. It didn't go anywhere, you know. But there's all these kind of things. That's as an example of things that can lead you astray. Like, there was a guy there, Ken O'Keefe. Have you heard of Ken O'Keefe?
Can't say I have, no.
He's an ex-military man, but very passionate, anti-Israel. He kind of resonated with me a lot of things, but I think he's more anti-Jew than anti-Israel, you know. I think he's kind of nearly anti-Semitic, you know. So okay. I kind of keep away from him, you know, because I have no time for that. But he set up this thing 3 years ago. What was it called? I can't remember, but basically it was based on the law as well. And they were basically saying that they could write a contract that every person could take and they could submit to their government that would basically free them from the system, right? They wouldn't have to pay taxes. So a lot of these things seem to have the allure of money in them. So with the One People's Public Trust, yeah, when we do this, you're all going to officially get the money that is hidden by the government from you in your own personal state account, you know, all this kind of mad shit. But then it lures people in because people think money, you know.
It's the carrot.
Yeah, yeah. And then you had Ken O'Keefe, and it turns out he went off, got all the money. Can't remember the Treat People Power, Treat People Justice. I can't remember, but he ended up absconding out to some foreign country, to Seychelles or something like that, with all the money that he got for his plan, you know. So he still claims that he's going to do something with it. They've given him the benefit of the doubt that he will, but
the money is just resting
gone.
in his
Yeah, he's
account,
got a little young one now. She's about, I think she's 24, 25. Like, he's definitely in his 40s. An absolute beaut. He's out on the Paradise Island. He's got everyone's money. I don't think he's going anywhere, you know. But there's been all them kind of things that come true. But there's something at the moment that is really, really interesting. It's called the In Power movement. And before I go on to that, like, realistically, we are the change. I know it's the old niche, it's the old cliche, and it's kind of, it wears thin, but we are the ones we've been waiting for. And as you were saying earlier, if you really don't want to support something, don't buy it. You know where you're buying. Like I don't buy anything from Nestle. I try to avoid it as much as possible. Sometimes you'll end up eating something, you'll see a tiny little Nestle sign on the back of it, you know, it's in a multi-pack or something. But like, Nestle are really ravaging the lakes of California, stealing all the water. There's massive droughts there, and California's been fucked up ever since everyone started smoking weed legally. I love the concept of them recognising the importance of the cannabis plant, but it just seems weird. Ever since California legalised the weed, the place has gone to shit. You know, they're making loads of money. There's a massive economy growing off it, but like, the place has gone to shit, you know. There's really a lot of bad things happening between big massive fires and stuff that I suppose has nothing to do with that. But like, droughts, like, people are being limited to use only a certain amount of litres of water a day, while the likes of Nestle and the fracking companies get to use hundreds of millions of litres a day, you know. And
you think that the kind of the water crisis is due to cannabis being legalised?
No, but I was just saying, I think it's so strange. It's so strange. Ever since they've all got the cannabis legalised and everything's rosy, everyone's stoned, you know, happy out, the sun is shining. The place has gone to shit, you know, they're not even passing any fucking heed, you know.
But do you think there's a correlation there?
No, I actually don't.
You just think it's funny.
I just think it's strange. Okay. I don't even know, how did I venture onto that? What was I even talking about? I was talking about, what we do, how we actually, like, we are the ones we've been waiting for. How did I get onto California and weed from that one? Maybe it was the years of smoking weed, maybe, that done that to me. But like, we genuinely are, you know, and like, we can all try and do our things. I joined Direct Democracy. I believed that this was an angle for us to get a transition place where we could get back to being, I believe in anarchy, which is self-governance, really. It's self-rule, self-responsibility. People associate anarchy with anarchy, you know, with
petrol bombing
and all that. It's not, you know, it isn't. But I suppose I'm not any kind of ism, but if there was anything I'd be close to, it would be an anarchist, you know. But it's because I think that we should be able to self-govern, and I think with all the technology we have, like, you can go onto Facebook and you can like a post there immediately. One post can get 1 million likes in half an hour, you know. So if you have people directly interlinked on a database, like something that was involved in the state, that was proposing ideals for certain localities and stuff, you could directly get involved in your democracy, you know. And because we have the old Article 48 in our original constitution had direct democracy in it. So it was basically that we rule ourselves, but you could elect representatives come in and act on behalf of you. But if they weren't doing the job, you just get rid of them. There was no party politics. There was nothing like that, you know. And because we initially had it in our initial constitution, there was an angle there to bring it up in an Irish sense and say maybe we could reinstate this Article 48. And then you kind of have a platform from which you can start coming back towards us governing ourselves a bit more. So that was one thing I done to try and make a change. I went round and I was handing out leaflets and I was getting involved in all sorts of stuff, and it turned out there was people involved in it that I just didn't really sit well with me for some reason, you know. Like Ben Gilroy's fantastic, you know. He's fantastic, but he's doing some great things. He really is doing some great things in the course for people. But he can't win everyone's house back for them, you know. He can't be doing that. But the groundwork there was for direct democracy for that. Like I remember a lad in Navan here, Johnny Murta, like he was looking after, he was taking out water meters for people, you know. Like little things like that. Like you get stuck in and you do things like that. But you need a mass collective of people to be doing all these things together, you know, at the same time. And when you look at what's happened with Israel, with the BD, the boycott and divest sanction movement against Israel, like it's basically what happened with South Africa years ago, you know. People are just refusing to buy products from Israel. And that's it. You're not violently fighting against them. You're just hitting them where it hurts, you know, in the money side of things. And like you can make your statements with things like that. And you can honestly make a stand without going out or even leaving your home. You can just by what you buy, like you were saying earlier, you can actually make statements by what you buy and what you spend your money on. But a lot of the time people just don't know what's connected to what, you know. And me included. I'm sure I buy things now where there's some terrible things going on in certain businesses and I wouldn't even know. That's the truth of it, you know.
No, of course. And like you mentioned earlier about the idea of trying not to support Nestle if and when you can. But like I know Nestle and you hardly know the other names of the companies. There's something like 4 or 5 companies that own 95% of all food companies worldwide,
right,
or something outrageous like that.
Yeah.
So Nestle they might own 5 companies, but each one of those 5 companies could own 100 companies. So Nestle mightn't be anywhere on the packaging, but it could be a Nestle-owned product.
Oh yeah, and it does. And you'd see in the back part of it, you just see also owned by, or you just see a Nestle emblem or something like that.
Yeah, and increasingly what you're seeing now is produced for Aldi or produced for Tesco.
Yeah.
So you're
You don't
literally
know where
not
it's being
told where it's
produced.
fucking coming from.
Yeah.
Another scam with the supermarkets is, I've heard Aldi say that they buy, I won't say Aldi, I've heard supermarkets say something along the lines of, 90% of all our fruit and veg is bought in Ireland. But that doesn't stop them from buying it from an Irish company who's importing it.
Yeah.
And it's such a fucking con, like, you know, like in a way, 90% of our fruit and veg is Irish bought.
Yeah.
But that includes their fucking pineapples and worse than their pineapples, it includes their potatoes that were grown in Egypt.
That's
because they were bought by somewhere like the Mead Potato Company, which is a massive importer of fruit and veg, and then sold in turn to the supermarkets.
It's insane. I actually didn't know what them lips, but sure is. There's cons going on all the time, really.
There is.
Even with the organic foods, organic food, it can be listed as organic food if it has less than 38 chemicals sprayed in it or something. But if there's more than 38 chemicals sprayed in it, you can't list it as organic, So still, a lot of the organic produce you're getting, it's still coming into contact with chemicals and fertilizers and all this kind of stuff. So there's continuous cons, going on the whole time. Even the fact that in Spain, they'll import oranges from fucking Italy, even though they grow them in abundance in Spain, but it's just to kind of sustain the export-import industry, It's things that just don't add up. Remember your man with the garlic and the mad tax on the garlic, and he got jailed for it.
Yeah, Begley, was that his name?
What was the story with that,
Well, that was kind of different. That was a guy who just flat out broke the law. Now, again, I don't know the inner details of it, but my understanding of it is garlic, for example, has a massive tax rate.
Reason,
So he brought a container of it in from somewhere and marked it as apples, knowingly trying to screw the state out of money.
Yeah.
You can say that it's a stupid law, but it's a law.
There was a law and he broke it.
He went to fucking jail.
Yeah. It's crazy. It doesn't make any sense, these kind of taxes, and the VAT as well. I think there's really no reason or rhyme to the VAT prices put on stuff. They just don't add up. I remember looking at them years ago, and they just don't seem to add up. They're just random VAT prices on everything. There doesn't seem to be any reasoning behind them. Maybe this is, I don't know, maybe it's more toxic to the environment to grow this stuff or whatever it is, but there doesn't seem to be any kind of reason or rhyme behind the VAT prices.
Logic behind it.
No.
Yeah. No, it's a blanket figure, isn't it? What is it, 23%?
Yeah.
For most things, and then I think, kids' clothes might be at a reduced rate. I know there's none on food. But look, it's not something
it should
I know
fluctuate,
a lot about.
It should to suit certain things, but it's just across the board. The amount of money we pay in taxes, even when you look at I know from working in a company, looking at your wages every week, the amount of money you pay in tax and stuff that's just being filtered off the whole time, it is boil your piss, really, you know.
No, absolutely. But look, one thing that we can do is become more aware of these things ourselves.
Yeah.
And if you are aware, like you're aware of an awful lot of things that, let's say, I and a lot of people listening aren't, and it's getting that message out across to people. And I was actually surprised you brought a newspaper.
Yeah, it was the first newspaper I bought this year, would you believe?
Yeah, but we're only a wet week into this year.
Yeah, I know.
Like, I haven't bought a newspaper in fucking 10 years.
Yeah,
I was shocked when I...
Do you know what a newspaper is like to me? It's like a puzzle. And I look at it every day like a puzzle. And some time the boys in work would say, oh, what's your interpretation of that, Coogie? And I, for the crack, would go just off on a tangent, you know? But I'd see relative things the whole time. Like, there's so much... Like, I see the media... Like, I read a thing years ago. It's fascinating, but I can't verify the truth of it. It was a thing called Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. Okay. I know the Wu-Tang Clan done an album years ago called Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, and I was actually Googling the Wu-Tang Clan album, and I came across this document that they say it was found in a car boot sale in America back in 1997 or 1998. And it's basically this big documentation that was at one of the Bilderberg meetings in 1930 or something like that. And it went into how society could be formed and manipulated. And it kind of equated it to how an airplane works and how they do shock tests on airplanes. And that's how they test the efficacy of an airplane and how it will fly and stuff. So it was really, really interesting. It was kind of mind-blowing, very far-fetched. But it kind of gave me a whole new perspective on things in that what if everything is kind of a deception? And like, if you, the life we're living now, as you're saying, you believe that we've become domesticated, kind of a natural evolution, just kind of moving with the times. It was kind of something that we've done to ourselves, really, you know? And
in a sense, yeah. Aided now by nefarious people, absolutely. I wouldn't question that for a second.
Yeah, but we've definitely we've sped it up ourselves. We've kind of embraced.
We have. That's the best way I think of looking at it. We've embraced it.
Yeah, because
it's a lazy way out.
Like it does seem like that. I can absolutely accept that, you know. But there does seem to be like we're so disconnected from the self. Like I only heard the hour. I'm looking forward to hearing the rest of your chat with Ivor, you know. It was really interesting, and he's delved into the mind. He really has. And like, I think we kind of do need the assistance of some of these things, you know, like whether it's magic mushrooms or ayahuasca or DMT or do Kembo treatment or something, that thing when you lick the frog, you know. Like, I'd love to try that, but it's meant to be a horrific experience, you know. You'll purge absolutely everything out of you, sweat from the pores and every angle, I think. But you're meant to feel fantastic after it, you know. You're meant to feel fantastic. But all of these things, we kind of need to try and understand. Need to try and understand that side of things. But it's such a complex area, you know. And like, our minds, we only use, what do we use? Like, we only train the left side of our brain in school. We don't really train the right side of our brain. We only use, like, this 5%.
Yeah, I think that's more or less been debunked.
Has it? Yeah,
that idea that we only use like a tiny percentage of our brain.
Okay, yeah.
We use all our brain all the fucking time. All of it's more or less flat out, always.
The right side included, yeah.
Both sides. Yeah, the one is, it's not no good without the other, because they actually, interestingly enough, they can work independently. And
because they are independent actually. Because when you take out a brain,
well,
they're two separate.
No, they are connected.
In some way, are they?
Yeah, no, there is. Is it the corpus callosum? No, just
right.
forget I said
no,
that.
No, but it's interesting
my
because
neurology isn't as up to date as it used to be.
Because the last time, because I was fascinated by that, and I thought, and I kind of was rolling with that since. So I'm interested now to see that it is connected, because I thought there were two separate chambers. And like, because years ago I came across this, like, there was old teachings in school, trivium and quadrivium. Did you ever hear of them? It was like you have geography and art, you had all these different things, but trivium and quadrivium were taught up until the early 1900s in a lot of schools, late 1800s.
Sorry, what was that?
Trivium and quadrivium. So there were two subjects that basically train the right side of your brain, because everything we do is theoretical. Everything we do in maths and language and speech, all of that, it's all left brain thinking. But everything that's artistic or energetic or spiritual. It's all, you're more or less using the right side of your brain more, you know. Like they say, like if you're to write with your two hands, like then you're using both sides of your brain. But if you're only to write with your left hand, you're more using your right brain. If you write with your right hand, your left brain is activated more.
Right.
So like there's all these things now. Like I've just brushed off that stuff as well, Fran. So I'm definitely no expert in it. But I just thought it was mad interesting because like then you relate, if it is a case where right brain thinkers will be more spiritual and possibly more likely to be in touch with their inner self and be more connected to the universal thing that is life, you know, rather than being completely distracted by all the daily domesticated things that we have to do, you know. That's more of a left brain kind of way of thinking. The world we live in is more of a left brain kind of thinking. But the other side of it, the more spiritual aspect of it, is all relying on our right brain, which we don't train in school, you know. We really don't.
Well, the way
otherwise from art or music or something like that.
The way I've heard the left-right brain explained, the best way I've heard it explained, I think, is Jordan Peterson. You mentioned him there earlier.
Yeah.
And he would say that I'm going to get my lefts and rights mixed up here, but one side, say, looks after order and the other side looks after chaos. The idea being that when I say order, it's your daily life, everything that's around you, and then the kind of chaos things is what you don't understand. Say it's almost beyond your understanding, and I'm butchering this. So
no, but I can. The right brain must be looking outwardly beyond your comprehension. The left brain is what's making everything logical.
I think so, and I think the two of them are supposed to actually try and resolve.
Yeah.
During your sleep.
Right.
And that's what your dreams are.
Okay, yeah.
Now again, couldn't be any more rudimentary or basic.
Yeah, but still, yeah, because it makes sense, you know. It makes sense that they connect. That they like. I've absolutely no question about doubt that they communicate with each other. I actually thought that they were separate, and that blew my mind, you know.
No, they are, to a degree they are, but there is connections. There are kind of. I don't know how many of them, and I think it's the corpus callosum. I'm not sure. I think that's what they're called, but they certainly are connected. And the reason that I know that they're connected is because in treatment for severe epilepsy, they're often cut.
Right.
So these connections between the left-right brain can be cut. And
that's where the hardwiring's going wrong and causing the fits.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, there's too much. I think there's almost like a flurry of. There's a flurry of firings between neurons along these kind of highways connecting the left and right side of the brain to the extent that it overloads the brain and you have epilepsy, essentially, or epileptic fits. But the fucking mind-blowing thing here, fucking buckle yourself in for this.
Right, I'm steadying up.
When they're cut,
the
left and the right brain
still communicate.
No, they don't. No, actually, but that's nearly the point. They're independently conscious.
Holy shit.
Yes, let that fucking sink in over the next day or two. They're independently conscious to the point whereby they'll try and sabotage each other.
Holy.
So if the left brain, for whatever reason, wants to do something and the right brain wants to do something else, they will literally
battle it out.
Yeah, and it's it's been a while since I've been close to the information.
It's really interesting that, because even when I realised the two of them were kind of separate compartments.
Yes.
When I thought that they weren't joined, I was like, it's nearly telepathical in a way that they're actually communicating to each other, because there is no joining, but there is joining. So that's where they do to communicate.
They are joined by those. They're almost like cords, as far as I know.
Yeah.
Which connect the two sides, but I think they could be connected at the brain stem as well.
Yeah.
So, I tell you what, I'm going to say this to my listeners. I'm going to go back over that kind of reading that I've done, and I'll do a solo podcast and I'll text you when I've done that, because some of the stuff is just fucking mind blowing. I'm too far away from it now, and it's too vague. I'll only end up saying something kind of wrong.
I forgot there that you've got listeners. Hello, listeners. How are you? Sorry for all the mad stuff at the start there. I'm going to clean it up now.
Oh no, we've got some dirty territory to cover yet. You're not fucking getting out of here before we talk about 9/11, moon landings, the JFK assassination. What else do I want to talk to you about? Aliens, Roswell, Any of those
The
that I
aliens,
threw out?
he actually says earlier, it says if we're ran by lizard people, and I put up a post there last
reptilian
night.
government,
Reptilian
yeah.
government, and I put up a post last night saying I was going to be doing this with you. And a good pal, an old music friend of mine, the Nellatron, he came in and he says, a big shout out to the reptilians, you know. But like, there's so many things you get automatically associated with if you say you believe that there's engineering of the weather going on, or if you believe in fluoride, or if you're a bit of a conspiracy head. So people connect you, you know. Anello connects me. Anello, you're wrong, okay? David Icke, is he's a reptilian believer. He believes in all that stuff, you know.
Okay, can you tell? I know who David Icke is, but for the people who don't, can you just lay out who he is and what?
Yeah, well,
what he's
David,
made a
I'm
career
not a
from?
massive. I wouldn't know loads about David Icke. The most I know about David Icke is I'd be very fond of Richie Allen. Has a podcast. He's a Wexford man. He's over in Manchester, and he basically does weekly podcasts, 3 or 4 nights a week and a weekend. And he basically just brings on his ex-CIA heads, his ex-whistleblowers from worked in the American government. He has parents. He had Vera Twomey in over what was the story, her trying to get the medical cannabis for Ava. So he has all different people on, but it's very interesting. And he used to work under the title of David Icke, and he'd do a bit of talking with David Icke, you know. And then when I first came acquainted with him, he was speaking some very astute things that were in Icke's books, you know, that came true. And Icke wrote about them like in the 80s and the 70s. But I think he was an ex-football player turned presenter, like in the Premiership or something like
Who
that.
David Icke was?
David Icke, and
Okay.
then he'd done the flip and he'd started trying to find out about the world, and then he went on to an infamous. It just be shown on. I think I seen it there last year on RootTube. It was like telly's funniest moments, and one of them was David Icke sitting on the chair beside Terry Wogan and telling people like that the world is ran by villains and that there's paedophilia going on all over the place and that there's reptilians and all this kind of stuff, you know.
And when you say reptilians, you mean actual lizard people?
Well, he actually does mean that. He
Yeah.
means actual lizard people. And the thing that annoyed me about it, I got his book, Perception Deception. I just thought it was astounding. Some of the things he went on about in the book, like it's he was on the ball, and at the time he was being mocked. But it turns out a lot of it's after coming true. So I'm worrying now he's fucking right about the reptilians as well, you know. But the thing that really annoys me about him is that he says so much stuff that's so on the ball and that has the capacity, and he delivers it so well to make people really think maybe things are a bit different than I think they are. And then he goes on about the reptilians, you know, and people just go, that fella's mad in the head. Like, he kind of kills it. But then again, believe nothing, consider everything, you know. Who am I to say that there is or there isn't, you know? But like, there's something, actually, I was to say it to you. I seen you got your first official comment on one of the YouTubes. Yeah,
I did, yeah.
I seen that. I was chatting to you about that with the guy was saying that there's tunnels going from the Hill of Tara to Egypt.
Girl, I think, yeah.
Was it girl, was it,
Veronica
yeah?
Keown, I think her name was, yeah.
Yeah, so like, I love the Hill of Tara. I love it. Like, I go up there regular enough. It's only about 25 minutes from me, and I bring the kids most of the time. But I played a gig on Friday night, and I was talking to a few lads about it, and it just was in my head, and I said, you know, I'm going to go to Hill of Tara tomorrow. So on the Saturday, the missus went with all the kids up to her mum's house, you know. So I had a free few hours, and I was working night shift, and I had to get a bit of sleep before I went to night shift. But I said, I go over to the Hill of Tara, check out for these tunnels. I might bring my shovel with me, you know. See if I get an easy route into Egypt. You know, I've always wanted to see the pyramids. But I says, I'll tip over there anyway. So I tipped over, and when I get out of the car, I seen there's a man there, an old man who's always there. He's there for years and years and years. I can't remember his name. I think it's Dinny or Danny or something like that. But he's a poet as well. He has some great poems, you know. He's a lovely, lovely man. But he's in touch with all this, he reckons there's energy lines there, you know. And he brings people out and he says he can feel all these energies and stuff. Now, you're probably going to think I'm a crack now when I go with this. But I've never sensed any of that stuff. I can't meditate. I've tried to meditate. I can't clear my mind, you know. I can't clear me. I've never done ayahuasca or mushrooms or LSD or any of these things that really alter your consciousness, you know. And I'm going to someday. But I just can probably wait till the kids get a bit older so they can mind themselves in case I just go mental, you know. So I'm going to put it off on the long finger, but I'd love to be able to meditate. But anyway, aside from that, I feel very spiritual. I feel like I'm living in a state of amnesia. I think we all kind of are. And I think there's an inherent knowing we all have. That's what our life is. We're trying to rediscover that, you know. And then it's like we're experiencing life. It's like we're all parts. And people talk about God and stuff. Like, it's not this dude in the sky, but we're all parts of this bigger thing, you know, that can't be explained, but there's a source to it all. And like anyway, I don't know, it's hard to explain it and define it all, but there's an energy to the world, and there's something that we're kind of tapped off from, we're kind of kept away from. And when you like to look at what happened in Thailand with the big tidal wave that come in, and tsunami come in and blew the place out of it, like a day or two before that, like all the animals made their way up the mountains, you know. So we're supposed to be the superior being, you know. We have pineal gland, we have this right brain that really is inactive a lot of the time. It's not trained as much as it should be. But like we have a disconnectedness from the self somehow that I think might have happened naturally over the years, but I think it was known and it was suppressed. And I think us and the generation before and the generation before, we don't know what it is because we've been tapped out of it, you know. And then you have these clairvoyants and these other people who I've never really believed. But I do often wonder about all these things. I've never sensed anything really strong myself, but I just feel in me that there's something spiritual, something more, you know.
Well, if I was to put a word on what you're talking about, I call it instinct.
Yeah.
And it's basically, yeah, I can't put it better than that it's instinct. It's the same thing that a bear separated from its mother at birth, say, and put into, just for hypothetically, put into a forest by itself. It would instinctively know to find a cave, basically, and hibernate in the fucking thing.
Yeah.
You know this idea of instinct, of knowing. We have that because we're animals.
Yeah.
And we've had to leave it behind us in order to become civilized.
Yes,
in order to live
in
cities and towns and villages and not to be continually fucking each other over.
Yeah.
So we've lost our kind of our base nature as such.
Yeah.
And rightfully so, but only to a degree. And I think that is that idea that, you know, that there's something that you're missing and that there's something that you can't quite put your handle on. I'm beginning to think, and only in the very relatively recent past, speaking to Ivor, speaking to Anthony Murphy, going down a Jordan Peterson rabbit hole and a Young rabbit hole, and Alan Watts and Joseph Campbell and all these different people, even Joe Rogan to a degree. He's opened me up to so many other things. And again, the internet is giving me access to all of these things.
It's amazing, it really is, yeah.
But so that'd be my tuppence worth as to what you're referring to. Now, when it comes to energy lines and things like that, and don't get me fucking started on clairvoyant fuckers, fucking
like they're preying on vulnerable people,
society.
that
are
shit, people who are in despair, you know.
Yes,
no,
despair,
I've never really, it's never floated me. Like, I've never seen ghosts or had any experiences with afterlives or any of this stuff. I'd love to, because then it'd give me something else to work with, you know. But I've never had anything like that. So like these energy lines and these kind of things, they don't really work. I've never really experienced them, and all we are doing and what you're doing is you're giving platforms to different people to kind of express themselves from the experiences they've had and their perspective on the world they have. So for me personally, I haven't, but I got out of the car and I said to your man, he was feeding all the crows, and I says, how are you? I can't remember his name, for God, love my money. But I told him I heard that there's tunnels. I heard there's tunnels going from here to Egypt. I says,
since the YouTube comment.
Since the YouTube. It was Saturday just gone, you know. I says, I heard there's tunnels, and he looked at me as if I was mad. I'm sure everyone thinks he's fully mad, you know. So he looked at me and he says, no, it's ley lines. And I says, yeah, I heard about the ley lines before. And he says, yeah, the ley line goes through Newgrange and here and Stonehenge, and I think he said Machu Picchu and the Giza pyramids, and he was mentioning a few places, and he says this ley line goes around the whole earth and it goes through all these ancient sites. And if it does, and if it is true, it's pretty amazing that all these ancient civilizations knew to build these ancient sacred sites on this ley line.
What is a ley line though?
It's like an energy, it's a natural energetic field basically. So it's like you know, when you get a water diviner will go out and they'll find where a well is, where water is.
Yeah,
people go out and they can do the same for ley lines, you know.
Yeah, but that whole water divining thing's been debunked as well.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, especially like in Ireland,
There's water everywhere, so.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Pretty much.
Oh,
if you were able to go out and find somewhere where you dig a hole and you wouldn't find water,
down.
that'd be the right job, like.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, water divining's bogus, like.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
And it makes sense, or could be, because there's water
you
everywhere.
You
no
tap
doubt.
into the water table.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what digging a well is, and it more or less.
Yeah, it might be deeper in some places, but it has to be everywhere.
Plus, so. it's more or less everywhere. It's not everywhere, I don't think, but it's
right,
more,
Gary
it's more
Crane,
or less.
You're a liar.
He's a water diviner, is he?
Yeah, Gary does it. Well, he's just. People say he's got the gift, you know. Like he's in a family, a big family of people, but maybe he's just every time he picks a spot, they'll find water, and it doesn't matter where he goes, they'll probably find water.
But you see, this is the thing. He can't guarantee that he'll find water.
Yeah.
His success rate will be the same as my success rate.
Yeah.
And I've no fucking gift.
Okay,
and I don't need a special shaped rod or stick or anything to just blindly walk out into a field and say, here lads, my success rate will be the same as his.
I'm going to start advertising as a water diviner.
Go for it.
For the crack.
Go for it.
Go out there and find wells half of the time.
And here's an interesting one on water diviners and people with gifts and the cure and that. We were talking about the natural law of things earlier on, and so long as you're not harming anybody, no big deal. And who's a water diviner harming?
Exactly, yeah.
But believing in things that aren't true and are demonstrably false, more to the point, that's harmful.
Yeah, there's definitely that, but there's actually, we're living in a time now, that is harmful, but we're living in a time now where a small group of people are deciding what's true and what's not true. So, like, if it's demonstrably false, absolutely, things like that should be shut down. But then you have the freedom of speech thing. But like, if you have people is saying that they're speaking to dead people, past people, and they're filling their hopes up, or you have people saying that they have the cure for cancer and they don't, and someone's eating nettles for a couple of months and they die of cancer, so things like that are very misleading and
very harmful.
They're very harmful,
And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that water divining should be banned.
Yeah, but I know what you mean.
Or
yeah.
even those fuckers who are telling you that they're talking to your mother or son or daughter or whoever it is that's in the afterlife. I don't actually think that should be banned. Fundamentally, I'm opposed to banning things, full stop.
Yeah, well, I'd be the same, yeah. Yeah, no, I can see what you're saying, though, like, things like that. Like when you think about even talking about cancer there, like, there's a Cancer Act in England since 1937 or 1947. So basically, if you propose that you can cure cancer with something else other than what the medical system is throwing at you, you can be jailed, So
and proper order.
Yeah, well that's
for selling false hope like that.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. But there's the whole spectrum that's opening up now with the cannabis.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people are getting diagnosed with terminal cancer and they're still alive 5 years later just taking cannabis. Now, they mightn't be curing it, but they're suppressing it. It's not killing them, But a doctor can't. Like, I know people who've got cancer now and they've went with kind of alternative treatments as well as other stuff if other stuff isn't working. And some of the doctors that are straight with them will say, well, we can't advise that, we can't advise that, but if it's working for you, keep going with it, So, like, they can basically only advise the radium and the hormone treatment and the chemotherapy and everything that costs money there that sustains the industry,
Surely the doctors can say, for argument's sake, if they have gone down a cannabis shaped rabbit hole and seen the research, because the hard science is there. It's being done and it's been done.
Yeah.
And there's a guy in Ireland, James Linden of Greenlight Pharmaceuticals, and he's put a massive push on.
Yeah.
And fair play to him. I hope to get him on at some stage.
So he's actually a pharmaceutical company. He owns a company.
Yeah, he's worked in the pharmaceutical industry for years. He has owned pharmaceutical companies and owns a new one called Greenlight Pharmaceuticals. And
that's great, yeah. So they're the type of people who really make a change, you see.
Oh, massively so.
In the world, that's what we need. You need these people in the high ranks of government, in the military, in the media. You need people with a backbone there, seeing what's going on. If they see things that are untoward, that aren't fair, that aren't just, that are deceptive in a way, like, they're the ones that we really rely on for the change to happen, because that's where it really, really, really happens,
But these people won't get the notoriety that they deserve, and therefore the funding that they deserve, and their voice won't be heard until people like you and me start not only having these conversations, but start fucking uploading them for the world to listen to.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of way. And that's what I love about podcasting, and it's the internet in general. It's not only our access to information, but our ability to disseminate that information to other people who, for whatever reason, aren't able to access it.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't know how to kind of validate a website's credibility. Do you know, that kind of way? Maybe they go on to you'llneverbelievethis.com and read everything as if it's fucking gospel. Like.
Yeah, or Your Newswire or something like that. Yeah, there's some
whatever
god
it
awful
is.
platforms out there that are spreading pure. They like use headlines, real controversial headlines, to suck people in, and then they get all the hits from the advertisements. So once the article is opened, when the people realise it's bullshit or not,
It's been paid for.
it's been paid for and they've made their money, you know. And you have all these rip-off merchants now, so it's the same as anything. Like even I was saying earlier, people were getting excited with the One People's Public Trust because you might get money, and they're excited with Ken O'Keefe because you might not have to pay taxes. Like the Bitcoin thing is, it's been great to see it grow, you know. But it's been kind of saddened me at the same time to see all these people who got into it at the start, because kind of the glue that holds the whole control over us is the economic system, you know. Like we have to pay to live. We're the only species on the planet that has to literally pay to live, you know. So if you're not working and you're not earning, you're fucked, really, you know. So what was I was going to say something there, like I was talking about the likes of the people thinking that money is going to, and then we go on to Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin then started to really reap rewards for people who invested in it early. And then they suddenly forgot that the reason why they were so enchanted by it in the first place is because we take the centralised power from the banks. We start controlling our own currency, you know. It dictates itself. The regulations aren't there that the banks put on it. So you basically take the power from that power structure, which basically holds the glue together on the entire control structure, you know. And that's what was so exciting about Bitcoin. I was an eagle. I went to invest in it at the start when they were only like a couple of euro, a couple of dollars or something to kind, and I couldn't figure it out, you know. I'm like a caveman on a computer. I just couldn't figure the bloody thing out. And I didn't do it, but I probably have a couple of 100,000 now at some stage. Before Christmas, they went up to 10 or 20,000 a coin.
I'm not in on I know what cryptocurrencies are, but I don't know the ins and outs.
They're
of it,
coming
like.
fast. They're coming.
And
This year, I'd say, could be... This year, we could really see... You could see another collapse, you know? Because even the stocks collapsed there 3-4 weeks ago. Massive dip. There was a big scare in them. And I don't know. I watch what's happened with Saudi Arabia and Israel and Russia, and they're all kind of getting together, China and that. It's as if they're kind of cozy up together because there's trouble on the horizon for the petrodollar, and we could see a changeover of ownership of the global currency basically. And I have a funny feeling it's going to be a cryptocurrency as well. I'd say it's going that way because everyone's kind of going cashless. There's some countries like Finland I think are completely cashless at this stage. They're not using cash. It's all smart. It's all cards, debit cards, credit cards. And like I don't know, it kind of annoyed me, the Bitcoin, because people just got the green-eyed monster took over, you know. It was all about the money then, you know. I'd be able to buy a boat and I'd be able to buy a big car, but the reason why we were going with Bitcoin is because it took the power from the central banks and the Federal Reserve and that.
But that hasn't changed, has it? Like, granted, some people have become extraordinarily wealthy, if only until the whole thing fucking collapses.
Yeah.
But what's wrong with that? Surely early adapters of new technology should be rewarded. And if there wasn't big rewards there, then there'd be no early adapters.
Oh yeah, and they'll be rich no matter what. But I think what's happened, Bitcoin, as it's designed, if we all went on a Bitcoin now, but you can't because it has a limit, has a threshold. There's only so many coins that can be created, you know. But it was a great template for what we could do. But the problem with Bitcoin is that it seems like they couldn't control it, and they still can't control it, but they've got into it somewhere. I'm saying they, but the financial fellas, the fellas who were running the money system as it was, it seems like you have people like George Soros and that, they use mass geographical standing of people. They go into nations and change nations around by collapsing their banks or by funding like an insurgency on one side or the other. Like, so they have ways of manipulating the course of events. And even though Bitcoin was a very safe currency and it couldn't really be destroyed, the image of it can be manipulated. And I'm seeing already in the papers like these criminal gangs have basically extorted loads of money from like children's charities and hospitals, and they hacked into their systems and they wanted ransoms in Bitcoin, things like that, you know. So the Bitcoin, it's being undermined, it's being played as maybe not the greatest thing, but still in the last year we've all started, you hear more about Bitcoin in the mainstream. There was silence about it for years, you know. But in the last 12 months you've started to hear more about it. Last year, by summer last year, they were really pushing it and everyone was starting to talk about it, you know. People were investing in it big time, and then she crashed down to something like 8,000 from 20,000 I think about 2 weeks ago. It's been associated with criminal gangs because it's unregulated. So I think what's going to happen is it's going to be undermined enough. People won't go with the Bitcoin, and they'll probably, because people would tend to go toe the government line. They trust the government line, you know. They trust whoever is running the economic system now. The majority of people will just go with whatever cryptocurrency they offer, you know, because you have your loan with us, you have your mortgage with us. So it'll basically be identical. It'll just be digital, you know. And like, God bless the fella who wants to earn a bit of cash here and there, or I don't know what you do to the homeless man in the street, because unless he has a smartphone, you won't be able to give him a penny, you know. So
you'll be able to fine him his €100 for.
You won't be able to fine him his €100, yeah. But like, the Bitcoin is very interesting, but it seems to be getting undermined a lot. You know, the media is doing a good job now to make it seem like, no, it's not great, it's not that great. But these cryptocurrencies are a good idea. So
you say the media then again. Do you watch the news? Do you watch television? Do you listen to the radio?
I would listen when I'm going on my travels. I'd always have a listen to news talk and stuff. This year now I started to go back, because I spent years and years never listened to news, never looked at the paper, never had any interest, unless I looked at Nuts magazine and Zoom magazine, and that was my reading material, you know, and that was really it. And I had no interest, absolutely no interest. I didn't see the point. They're all fuckers anyway. I never liked the look of any of them, never liked the sound of most of these politicians. Didn't interest me at all. And then I started to take heed, you know. I actually started to pay attention, and I was listening to a lot of news, and initially I would have been labelled as a lefty, you know. Like my older sister I would have talked to at times there, we'd have arguments, disagreements about stuff, but I remember she told me once, like only about 9 years ago, she told me that I was a socialist. Didn't even know what a socialist was, and she goes, no, you're more of a communist. And I was like, what the fuck is a communist, you know? Yeah. So I didn't know what any of these things were. I didn't have a clue of anything, and then I started looking into it all, and I remember when I started getting political, would that be the word, or getting worldly wise, or getting curious, I suppose, about the world, I would have actually allowed people to call me a lefty liberal, you know. But now I couldn't take anybody calling me that, because the left has gone insane at the moment, you know. They just seem to have gone crackers. So I realise now the left-right paradigm is a design. It's like this, remember we were saying about like the Orwell's thing, it's like this or this, you know. So you're finding people are identifying, like we're living in the age now, I think Peterson said it in that meeting, where people aren't individual anymore. The individual is being dismantled, and everything is, do you fall under this particular identity politics? It's identity politics, you know.
It's interesting that we've gotten back to this. We've come full circle back around to the brain. That order chaos dichotomy that I mentioned about the split in the brain, that order chaos, that's left right, that's conservatism and progressiveness.
Right.
So the whichever side, I can't remember now, I always get me left and right in my brain mixed up, but the order side is conservatism, is the right, and the left side, very broadly speaking, obviously, the left side is the liberal or creative side.
See, it's funny because it's as if everything we've been taught is the opposite to what it was. Like, I'm fully convinced, like nearly everything, it's, look at it now, I consider everything could be the opposite. And like, even when you talk about that, like left, right brain, left wing, right wing, like you associate right wing with conservatism, and you associate left wing with liberalism. Yeah. So you'd imagine your left brain is left wing and your right, but it's the opposite. Your right brain is the liberal side, and your left brain is conservative. So that's a good way to remember it, because it's like the opposite. So your left is meant to be your liberal.
Well, I don't know if left is liberal and right is conservative in relation to the left side of your brain and the right side of your brain. I'm not sure which one is order and which one is chaos.
No, I'd say the right would be the more liberal side.
Okay.
Because that's meant to be the artistic, spiritual.
Okay, well then, if that's the case, then it would be. Yeah.
And then the left one would be your more conservative. The left side of your brain would be the more conservative. And like I often wondered about, like I have uncles and that who were in school here in Ireland years ago, and like if you're right, like with the kids there, I noticed there recently, there was like an exercise, if you do it with them and they do a butterfly, but use both of their hands at the same time, they're using both sides of their brain equally at the same time. So I was thinking there's this link between the left and the right brain, left hand right brain and right hand left brain. And then when you go back 40, 50 years and even sooner, more recent than that, in Irish schools, like if you wrote with your left hand, you got the shit bet out of you. You know, you were made right with your right hand.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like these type of things, like I could be clutching at straws here, but you wonder how much they understood the way the brain works. How much like they were doing. You can imagine like when there was no regulations. Like we live in a pretty civilized world now. Like while I give out about Europe, the EU I give out about, not Europe. When I give out about the EU and stuff like that, like we're pretty lucky here in the West. Freedom to travel, we are fairly free, you know.
We have a pretty fucking good.
Pretty good, you know. There's no doubt about that. And like I'm not the ultimate pessimist in all that I say about that. Like we definitely have it pretty good, but there's so much more we can achieve. I think as people, you know, if we just start to maybe. I think I'm losing my train of thought again. I keep losing my train of thought.
I think you're right. We have to start talking about it. We have to become aware of these things. It has to be. Yeah. I put it this way: if you. Like, was there a catalyst that woke you up? Like you were saying, like there was a period in your life when it was all nuts and whatever the other magazine was.
Well, I think I went through a period before all of this interest in the world where I didn't really understand. Like I had a child, I had one kid at the time, but I was kind of I was led. As I said, I read Nuts magazine and Zoo magazines, you know. I love the ditties. And I was into all that kind of stuff, you know.
Of course,
football,
as a young man. Like.
Football, drinking, women. But, like, I wasn't. I had my partner at the time and we had a child. But I remember I spent a long time, not a long time, I spent a couple of years wondering, what was I at? You know? What am I at? Is my purpose literally only to work and raise my kids, which is something I'm very happy to be doing, working and raising my kids. But outside of that, do I just get a holiday 2 weeks every year and just settle for me Friday and Saturdays free and maybe go for a meal or go on the piss? Most of us in the Western world just go on the piss, you know. That's what we do.
Certainly in Ireland anyway, yeah.
In Ireland, you know, so we're just basically working and playing the whole time, and we're not really getting stuck into anything. Like from the get-go, I started writing songs and playing the guitar when I was 16 or 17, and I'm actually worse at playing the guitar now, but from day one I found it hard to play cover songs. I couldn't get the rhythm right, so I ended up I went to guitar lessons and teachers and that, and I think because I played right-handed but I am left-handed could have been always the problem, and I hadn't got the patience to switch over to me left hand and play left-handed guitar. But I always had a strumming issue, as in I was out of time when I'd be playing cover songs, and there was only a few I could play, so I got pissed off in the end and I realised I know the chords, so I'll just write songs. So I started writing songs, and when I was writing songs, I tended to verge on analytical kind of lyrics, you know, analysing the world and asking questions that I'd never talk about among my friends at the time, because we were just mad and having a crack. So anything that was going on in my deepest consciousness, I was kind of putting that into my music, and I was writing songs just asking questions, wondering what's going on, you know, and why is this and why is that, and can we do something? And probably listened to too much Bob Marley and John Lennon as a kid, I don't know. But I joined the band I'm in now, and we were three-piece. The Lo-Fi, we were three-piece initially, and then Eamon joined us after about 2-3 years. And Eamon was after listening to a couple of songs we recorded, and he was listening. We were standing outside rehearsals one night, and he goes, I'm really liking, I love what you're doing with the lyrics of them songs. He says you must have seen Zeitgeist, did you? And I was like, never heard of Zeitgeist in my life, didn't know what he was on about. I said, what's that? And he says, just check it out, it's a video on YouTube. So I went and had a look at Zeitgeist, and within an hour I was blown away, not because like there was a lot of stuff that I don't agree with Zeitgeist. I wouldn't be a Zeitgeist fan per se, but it was the first time I actually realised that some of the thoughts I had on the world weren't purely my own, because I'd never really collaborated with anybody else where there's been an agreement of minds, you know. So I realised I felt great in that I wasn't that much of a weirdo, that there's other weirdos that think this kind of stuff as well, you know. That's what I was kind of thinking. So that kind of was a big opener for me, because I realised there is something to look into here. So I started then trying to understand, because we are so in debt, and my kids are all going to be carrying the debt of our generation, not understanding what happened to us, you know. So I said I wanted to understand how the system worked, and I started with the financial system. I started with the banks, and I couldn't believe like the beginnings, the origins of it was all based on backed by gold, and people eventually didn't come for the gold, they just came for the cash. And then after a while they realised, so nobody's going to come for the gold at all, so they could kind of say cash was there, that wasn't there, but they couldn't do that, because if there was a rush on the bank, people would come and take the gold, so they had to cover their arses kind of so much. And then Reagan and Thatcher came along, and they created this free market system, and everyone thinks it was great because everything built so fast and we evolved so fast and all that stuff, but there was pros and cons to it, you know. And I think you fast forward into the crash of 2008, 2009, and I think that's where you see what it was penultimately leading to, you know. And we haven't fixed it, you know. Did you see the Big Short?
I did actually, yeah.
Great movie, like, you know.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it was different.
Yeah, and I like the kind of sad thing about that got me at the end of it. It was funny as well, you know. Everyone's going around like they're in a fucking Enya movie, you know. And like, and your man knows like the whole thing is fucked, you know. The whole thing's after going belly up, and everyone's going around shopping and deliriously happy. But like at the end, it finishes up like they didn't stop doing what they were doing then. They just basically stepped it up a massive level. So where people who really hadn't got the occupational skills or the guaranteed 30 years of work to pay back their mortgages were getting these loans handed to them, thrown at them, that's been quashed. That can't happen as easily now. But now it's just stepped up on the national level. So let's say what was happening on a smaller level with all us, myself, yourself, or someone going in and applying for a mortgage, and then you apply for the mortgage and the money doesn't really exist until you give them all your promises and show them all your incomes and outcomes and how decent of a person you are paying back bills. And then eventually to get the promissory note, you sign your name at the end. It's not even a contract, you know. It's not two signatures behind it. It's just your signature and your wife's signature probably. And that's it. Then the money's created, you know. So out of thin air, that money just conjures up from your signature. You create that through that promissory note, and then the bank flogs that promissory note on the stock market anyway and makes another couple of grand off it, you know. But then you have to pay back the money that they never had, that you created in their account at interest over 30 years. It's like, it's a phenomenal setup. It's very clever, you know. And we're all delighted because everyone in Ireland, like, we all watch the Bull McCabe in the field, you know. We all want to buy our fucking land, you know. That's what we want. In Germany and France and all these countries, they don't. They rent, you know.
Well, it's a very Irish thing, this idea of owning your own property.
Yeah. And like, I believe there's intelligent, nefarious activities behind all of these structures that ultimately enslave us. I believe that they seen it coming with Ireland, and I believe that's why our hit was so much harder than all the other European countries that also were hit at the same time, you know. Because it was a much bigger thing than any individual nation. It was the financial system by its design that done what it's been designed to do. Like, it inflates everything that inflates, eventually just pops, you know. And every time the bubble bursts, if it's every 20 years or whatever it is, we're the ones to pick up the bill, you know. The boys who are gambling with all the stuff, the big men, they don't. They all get sorted out, you know. But we're the ones that pick up the bill. And then in the meantime, they've privatised national services and stuff like that at the same time. But looking at what happened in the Big Short, it's basically nations now. The nation of Ireland is going to these central banks, and it can't afford to pay back the loan that it's looking for, but it's getting it anyway, you know. And we're getting it through bonds that we're creating that have no value really, you know. It's just all words on paper, a signature and a promise, and Bob's your uncle. There's another 20 billion or 120 billion at ridiculous interest rates, you know.
What do they call it? Indentured servitude, I think.
Indentured servitude, yeah.
The inability to pay back.
Yeah.
You're essentially enslaving yourself.
Yeah, that's it. And like a mortgage, like, that's another word. If that's a French, derived from French word, you know.
What is it?
Debt payment.
Debt payment.
Yeah. Like a payment till the debt, you know. Like, there's so much going on. It's very hard to put a finger on anything in particular, but the money system really does hold a lot of it together, you know. And we all have to pay to live, so we really don't have the time to be taking on governments or going out and protesting on the streets. We have kids and families. We want to enjoy our free time when we have it, as in enjoying it with our loved ones, you know. So a lot of people don't really want the hassle of accepting that there might be something a bit dodgy with the whole setup, and that maybe the people who have to do something about it is themselves, you know.
But that's the thing, like it's a hard pill to swallow that you live a vacuous existence.
Yeah.
Do you know that kind of way?
Yeah.
To come to the realization that you hate your job, you know, are working towards nothing other than paying back an insurmountable debt of your own and of your nation and everything else. Like, people don't want to talk about, or people don't want to think about it because it's not nice. Do you know that kind of way?
No,
like
it's not, and you
the
can
state that we're
understand.
in.
I can understand. People do. They don't want to entertain it, you know, because they've enough to deal with. You know, they have a lot of cases. People have enough to deal with.
But there is promise out there, and I think that the conversations that I've been having with other people, and particularly this one with yourself, it'll make people maybe just that little bit more aware.
Absolutely.
And like, we're not going to solve fuck all here, and no one is. Do you
No,
know that
but
kind of way?
every little bit.
Yeah,
counts.
see, and I've dedicated a solo podcast to exactly that point, this idea of incremental improvements.
Yeah.
You know, being aware of something, as the old cliche goes, is the first step being aware of a problem is the first step in solving it. So just having the conversation, and for people listening to this to either share it amongst their friends, you know, take a screenshot of it and send it, or share the link, or just bring it up in work, or I don't know, like, where have you found a good source for the type of material that you've been reading? Where have you found reliable, or what would you encourage people to look at or avoid?
Yeah, there was a lot of things through the years, you know, like, because you don't have time to be researching everything yourself, so you kind of you find people who might be doing podcasts, people who are bringing on guests and who have experience and experts talking about certain things. So like, there was a lot of crap, you know, and it took me a long time to filter it out. And there's one man now that I only came across about 2-3 years ago, and he really it's like every time I listen to him, it's like he's speaking my thoughts at times, you know. And he's an old enough man from Australia, Max Egan.
Can't say I've heard of him.
I'd highly recommend anybody out there to have a listen to Max Egan. He's like, he delves deep in. He's been researching for 30-40 years. He's a fantastic musician. That's how I first came across him. He's a guitar player, you know, unbelievable guitar player. But he's like, he's fantastic. And like you were saying earlier, you pay what you support, you know. Like, I used to pay money to Trócaire and Sightsavers and Concern, you know, and I thought that was my bit. That was one of them little things you can do to make the world better. And then I realised these organisations are insidious in a lot of cases, and that they're actually causing more problems than fixing them, you know.
People view that type of donation, I think, as almost like the indulgences of a bygone era. You know, you're almost buying your way into heaven. You know, that kind of way.
Yeah.
I might be a terrible person, but I chuck Trócaire a couple of quid every month, so, you know, leave me the fuck alone. Do you know that kind of way?
Yeah, and I was one of those people. I actually thought that this is my it's one of the little things I was doing. But like, we really have to apply ourselves, you know. Like, you have all these God-loving people that are all Christian, and like, I used to be kind of like every liberal there, watching what happened here at the church and that. You kind of go anti-church, you know. You go anti-religion, priests are paedophiles, all this kind of stuff. This generalization kind of stuff, but like, there's some sound values in that Christianity, you know. There kind of is.
Oh no, there absolutely is, and I'd be a devout atheist, and have been essentially as long back as I can remember. But
yeah,
and I've said this multiple times, and I don't want to bore people, but it's worth repeating at least once more. That organised religions have bastardised the wisdom that they are supposed to be custodians of.
Absolutely, yeah.
That there is inherent truth in, you know, the messages that they spread, I suppose, but because they're institutions, because they're organisations, they essentially serve to, or live to serve themselves.
Yeah.
This idea of, you know, keep coming back next week and we'll drip feed you a little bit more nonsense, and keep coming back.
Yeah, it's interesting, all right. Like, they really, like, there's something it's funny now, because my youngest son said to me there a few weeks ago, we were driving in to collect the eldest lad from school, and he asked me, he says, I don't believe in God, Dad.
What age is this lad now?
He's 9. He's very
What a
inquisitive
hero.
now. Yeah, he asks so many questions. You know, there's times he'd ask you like things you learn from your kids. You know.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, why is the sky blue? Holy shit! I don't fucking wait. Like go on Google and have a look. You know. But he was saying, he says, I don't believe in God, Dad. And I was like, and what's that about? And I says, why? What makes you feel like that? What do you believe in then? And he goes, well, it just doesn't seem. It seems silly. Like there's not a man up in the clouds looking down on everyone. And I went, that's a fair point, you know what I mean? That's fairly well observed, you know. I says, but some people see God as not just a man in the clouds, see it as basically the epitome of everything. But I says, no, and he goes, but I believe in Jesus because, like, he was here and he done them things, you know, and there's stories about him and people seeing him. He says, so I believe in Jesus, you know, and Jesus was pretty cool. And I says, Jesus was a ledge, man. I says he was a ledge, you know, because Jesus was pretty cool. You know what I mean? If you live by the way of Christ, as they say, he was.
Yeah,
you can't go too wrong.
He didn't have a bad message.
No, he didn't have a bad message, you know. But like the other things there, I looked into the religion, the Bible, and all that stuff. Like this, like the synagogue of Satan, he goes on about, and the money men, he cast the money men away from the table and all this stuff. Like all these Christians out there, they love their money, you know, and they sit back and they're waiting for the return of Christ and all this stuff. Like honestly, if you really, really, really look at what the man stood for. He wants you to participate the fuck in what's going on. He doesn't want you to sit back and wait for him to arrive back, you know. Because if you do, and if he does, he'll tell you, well, you're going down there, you cunts, you know. Sorry, language. But like, but like that's the thing, you know. People sitting there, like there's like these new age movements and people sitting there and they think, if we just send out good energies and good vibes, like the world's going to change, you know. Like, I don't know. I think we have to get involved. We have to do something, whether it's doing this podcast or me. Like, I'm delighted to get this platform to speak to you today, Fran, because I talk some crap, you know, and a lot of it, I go on mad tangents and I go a bit extreme with some of my views, but like, I've done a lot of ranting and raving on Facebook through the years. But this is a great opportunity to kind of get it off my chest. I kind of steadied. I said this new year and I was going to stop buying the newspapers, because when I bought the newspapers and when I looked at the news, that was what was kind of igniting me the whole time. And I go on a rant. I see this and I go on a rant and I go on a rant. And like since December now, I've gone through all my old Facebook. You know the way you can go back on this day previous. I'm clearing out everything I done, and I've had a look back at some of the things I wrote, and like I went through a phase where I was kind of angry with everyone, you know, and I was like, I don't know, like as I was saying earlier, it's like we all live in a state of amnesia. We're constantly trying to know, but most of us go on like we know it all. And I suppose from our own perspectives, we kind of do. From our own experience, all we know is what we actually know, you know. We can take all these stories we hear about everything else going on in the world, but all I know is, I suppose, whatever I've experienced, you know. So it's really interesting listening to Ivor. Like, I'm going to have to go on a trip to Peru, try some of that ayahuasca shit.
Oh, absolutely, and I wouldn't be
it.
surprised if Ivor organises a trip for as many people as he can get to go over there. I know I'd be queuing up to go.
Yeah. Even to do the Inca Trail and Machu Picchu. And
if nothing else, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Amazing, yeah.
But the beauty of getting you on and people like you on and giving you this platform is people don't just get the post. Do you know that kind of way?
Yeah.
They get a good all-round handle on you as such.
Yeah, yeah.
You might have said a couple of crazy things here, but I might have maybe pulled you back a little and just kind
Yeah,
of
that's good,
poked
yeah.
a little bit more. And so somebody might be listening, you might say something and someone listening might go, this lad's fucking off the wall. And then I might dig a little deeper and you go, oh, okay, maybe he has a bit of a point. And
Yeah.
you didn't come in here saying that, sitting me down and saying, listen, Fran, this is how it is, you've all the answers. And I don't do that either.
Yeah.
And I think I've spoken about it on one of the solo podcasts, this idea of credibility. And to be very careful who you deem credible.
Yeah.
I'm not credible. You're not credible. Like we're not infallible, say. Do you know that kind of way?
Absolutely, yeah.
So make up your own mind. Like
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that I've the answers to anything, and I don't think you claim to. I know
No.
Ivor certainly doesn't, and I don't think any of my previous guests have made the claim that they're right and anybody else is wrong.
Yeah.
And there's something very useful in that, in just not taking anybody's word for anything, because that's where your autonomy comes from. Because if you're just sucking up everything that's been thrown at you, you're that domesticated animal again.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
if you've no autonomy, if you're not making up your own thoughts. Now, put it
The
this
lack
way.
of critical thought is
I'm
it's
actually
endemic at the moment. You
I'm
know,
hoping to start a critical thinking course.
Really, yeah.
Yeah, and it's doing this. I'm thinking about doing this with another mate of mine. And I'd love your involvement, and anybody listening. If the idea of either attending a critical thinking course floats your boat, or maybe getting involved in giving it or creating it, get in touch with me. My email address is imoffthelead@gmail.com, or send me a message on Facebook or whatever. But the idea being that if I was to advertise it, I think the route that I'd go is I'd use clickbait, and I'd use as many nefarious means as possible to basically con people into signing up to the course.
Yeah.
Because it would be a paid course.
Right,
so you con people to take the course, and then on the first day of the course, or the day that you sign up, or the day that you go in to learn your first lesson, I'll explain to you how I got you, how I conned you out of your money.
Yeah, and because you're automatically you're nearly making it the fact that most people who end up signing up will be lacking in critical thought, because the ones who would have critical thought would say, "This gun's conning us, lads. You won't go near this thing."
Well, no,
there'll
be utility in it for people who can see and who are listening to this, because it's not as if this is something that I'm hiding. Do you know, like,
Yeah.
I know so the first course or the first module or installment of the course will be explaining what clickbait is, and explaining how you can say one thing and mean another, and like, fuck, it kills me. I only saw it there a couple of weeks ago. It was an ad on TV. It was in between one of the young lads' programs, and I think it was for Vodafone, and it was, 50 fucking gig a month, a terabyte speed. It's only 25 quid a month for the first 3 months, and it was fucking 75 quid a month thereafter for the next 4.5 year contract that you sign up to. And I saw that and I kind of laughed, because I was there kind of saying to myself, like, but it was so obvious to me. I was like, fucking cunts. And I whipped out the calculator and I added up what it would cost. So they were selling it as €25 a month, but over the duration of the contract, I think it was 50 quid. No, it was nearly treble. It wasn't quite treble, but it was nearly treble what they were at. So it was 60 quid a month, say. And then I started thinking to myself, hang on a second, I have 15 years sales and business development experience. So that's why I just cop that like that.
Yeah.
And now, you don't need to have that to cop it, but Vodafone aren't fucking stupid. Whatever ad, that was a TV ad, so that didn't come cheap. They're not throwing money at TV ads for the crack. People are being conned into that. And there's a very predatory nature. There's something very predatory about that.
Yeah.
Like, you're taking advantage of people who don't have the critical thinking to see straight through your bullshit.
Yeah.
And you just see that everywhere. 2 for the price of 1, and buy 2 get 1 free, and all this kind of nonsense.
One of the students we had in one year was working in marketing, and he was explaining to me how, like, even the music they have in supermarkets and different stalls, it's all part of this marketing process, and it kicks in endorphins, and it's amazing. Like, they're starting to advertise like apps and games towards kids now as well, So you're talking about people naive. Like, kids wouldn't have the ability to see through any of this stuff, but if they have an app maybe with, or they have a phone with some kind of a broadband or a monthly subscription or something like that, they're end up being drawn into the market already, and people are advertising to them. I think it was Paddy Power or something. There was a bit of uproar over it a few weeks ago, start of the year.
What, they were advertising towards fucking kids?
Towards kids, yeah, gambling games towards kids.
A long-term marketing ploy.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Jesus
Isn't it crazy
Christ.
though? Like, if you go through Ireland now, like, all of the rural areas, they're kind of destitute. They're ghost towns now, a lot of them. But you
very much so.
You go through them like there's little shops gone, hardware places closed up, maybe woolen factories, whatever it is. But there'll still be 3 or 4 pubs and 2 betting shops,
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and a Chinese takeaway.
Yeah, and a Chinese takeaway. Like, it's crazy to see. It's crazy to see there how rural Ireland has been attacked now with this last collapse, and how they're kind of taken away from. There's a lot of rural towns struggling. You can see it. Like, I love travelling. When we go down the country, we always go down the country every year, somewhere or other. But rather than going the motorways, we go through the towns, And it's nice going through them. It's a bit of a journey at times. But, like, you see a lot of towns now are turned into ghost towns. They really are. Like Westmeath and Leitrim and stuff like that. But
you don't even have to go that far. You've driven through Kells recently.
No, Kells is bad. Yeah,
like, even.
I was in Kells yesterday. I went out to Clonmelon yesterday. I'd never been in Clonmelon. It was actually a friend of mine is after buying a house out there. Lovely spot out in Clonmelon.
But the further away you get from Dublin, say,
Yeah.
and let's say Galway, because obviously you get further away from Galway when you start approaching other places. But no, you're right, and I couldn't agree with you more. And what you do see is the betting shops, the pubs,
Yeah.
and the takeaways.
And I remember there was actually a part in that in 1984 Orwell's book where he says, the people, I can't remember the exact quote now. I get things wrong. I say dates in everything here now. I could be 3 decades off at some of the dates I might give you on things, but I can remember something along the lines of like the people they won't care about what's going on and they won't pay attention because they'll be too distracted by football, entertainment, and above all gambling. But I can remember it was part of the story, and it kind of you're reading this book from back 30 years ago, and you're seeing so many relative things to the world we're actually living in today. You know, it's like a blueprint at times for what we're living in. And back then it was like futuristic, far-fetched science fiction. You know.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we have the technology now. I don't know, was it Jordan Peterson or who was it I heard saying? Maybe it wasn't. No. But like a lot of stuff there, you see things in movies through the years, you know, like futuristic movies, like space movies, and they have like laser guns or they have self-tying laces, like in Back to the Future, and like it's as if
flying cars.
Yeah, I don't know who it was. Maybe it wasn't Jordan. It was someone else was saying like that. A lot of ideas get put into people's minds, you know, by these movies. So then it's put into the mind, and then someone comes along and will actually make that. So it's like we're imagining reality. Do you know what I mean? We're imagining it in advance via movies and stuff. This is what some fella was hypothesizing.
That makes perfect sense to me.
And then and then we come along and we actually create them things, you know. So what we're seeing in the movies today mightn't be created yet, but the idea, the seed is planted in someone's mind, and then eventually it's made, you know.
And I think that's what we're doing here.
Yeah.
We could be just planting a seed. Do you know that kind of way?
Yeah.
And the more people that are creating these platforms, like starting podcasts or YouTube channels or whatever it is, and the more people that are listening to them and watching them, the more we're being influenced by ourselves.
Yeah.
And less by, you know, the they, as you might call them, or, you know, the powers that be or whatever they are, because they do exist.
Yeah, they do.
They mightn't be as like tangible. You can't put a title on them, but
you can put the title on the Warburgs, the Oppenheimers, the Rothschilds, the JP Morgans. Like there's 4 or 5 families they have their tentacles in everything, and it's easily provable, you know. And and they have the monopoly, they have the control on so much. And you have people like they have little dogs that work for them, like George Soros and that. Like George Soros he's funded the Black Lives Matter movement. He's openly admitted this, you know. He gets involved. He likes to change the geographical standing of countries, you know. He collapsed the banks in where did he collapse the banks in there? Mongolia? No, somewhere more prominent than that. He funded one side of the Arab Spring in Egypt, you know. He funds his company Open Democracy or something like that. They fund millions to the Black Lives Matter movement in America, and he's funding the abortion debate here in Ireland at the moment as well. He's actually funding the repeal side. It's that company, but like he's been around since World War II, and like he was a Hungarian Jew, and he basically was. As a Hungarian Jew, he was, as a child, his family were rich, you know, and I have to make sure I get this right now, because this is something to make sure I don't. This is out of his own mouth. He's admitted to this in interviews and stuff like that. But he was basically his father, to make him safe from the Nazis. They brought him to stay with somebody. So someone took George under their wing as a kid. He wasn't that young now. He might have been 14, 15, 16. And like while he was with them, he was involved with the Nazis, and he had to pretend he wasn't a Jew. And he actually went around with them, taking all the goods off the Jews and sending them off to concentration camps. This was a Jew himself who pretended he wasn't a Jew to try and obviously he was going to save his life, and he was a very lucky man. But when he speaks about it, he has no remorse. He doesn't have any feeling whatsoever. It had to be done. It was just something. He's a very literal kind of person, you know, and he's very, 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 very rich. Very rich.
He sounds psychopathic.
Oh yeah. You'll find the interviews there if you look for it. You'll see Soros doing his interview. He done some channel back in the 90s or something like that. Like, no remorse whatsoever, you know, absolutely none. And like, he's like the dog that comes in. Like, you've heard of the Frankfurt School of Political Correctness and that, have you?
No.
Jeez, I really have to go for a wee. But
Yeah,
we'll take it up on that. Have to go for a wee. Yeah, that's really
absolutely.
Irish.
No,
That's
go
really
for it. You know what the toilets are, man.
I'm drinking too much water here, Fran. I'm enjoying this.
You're grand. No, I'm enjoying it myself, brother.
I don't think I've hung myself completely yet.
Mad bastard. I think you'll all agree. Bear with me now, because this is the first time this has happened, and it's not I say and we're live at the start to kind of denote the fact that a recording has started, and it is my intention to do the podcast live and the video record it. But Rogan, who this podcast is essentially platformed on, Joe Rogan's podcast, it's called the Joe Rogan Experience. I highly recommend that you look it up if you're not familiar with it. But this podcast was inspired greatly by Joe Rogan, and it's essentially the same format, and he is doing what I intend to do. So when he records a podcast, he video records it live. So if what has just happened there now, a guest or myself, the host, say, needs to run to the bathroom, Joe basically fills the dead air while they go. He doesn't stop the recording, because he has an audience who are actually engaged. He could have 10 or 20,000 people watching him live. Pardon me. So, bearing in mind that that's something that I'm aspiring to, I may as well try and get the practice in for when this does happen, and I am live. So, bear with me while I try and gather my thoughts. But I hope you're enjoying the conversation that I'm having with Ruiri, and I suppose it might be a perfect opportunity for me to put a plug in for the show itself. If you're enjoying this conversation, if you've enjoyed other conversations, if you've enjoyed the solo podcast that I've been doing, then get involved. Tell a friend, start the conversation yourself. Send me an email at imoffthelead@gmail.com. Write a review, like it, share it, start the conversation, keep the conversation going, and let's fucking provoke some conversations and initiate some change. I did it.
Come on, Fran. You filled the time.
I filled the time. Bit stressful, starting to sweat, but heart rate.
Yeah,
up.
and people get on it.
Good.
Fran is dead right. It's great to get this platform and hear different opinions, no matter how mad some of us may be. Yeah, but it's interesting. You know, people get into box sets and they get into movies and films and all these fictional paradigms, you know, but like what's happening in this world in real time is massively interesting.
Far more interesting.
And it's trying to figure it out is like, it's like this big jigsaw puzzle, and like it seems to be very nefarious, a lot of the stuff that goes on in the higher level of things, and it seems like we are cannon fodder of some way, shape or form, but it's very hard to define it to people and explain it to people. And maybe I have something I can offer that helps people maybe bridge some or connect some dots, I don't know. But this is what you're doing. You're giving people a platform to maybe offer up their tuppence, you know, and what they think. Because we all have different perspectives. And our own life experience is kind of what gives us different outlooks and insights to things, you know. And that's all different for every single fucking person on the planet, you know. So
no, absolutely.
And the people should get on to this, you know. You need to get a few more women in, or there'll be a serious gender balance debate going on.
I had my first girl on yesterday.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, it's not up yet because
Brilliant.
I only put up Anthony Murphy from Mythical Ireland. His second instalment was recorded Monday night. It went up yesterday, and I recorded the first podcast with a girl, Juliana Pena, yesterday. So I just didn't want to put it up too close to Anthony. I want to spread them out a little, and the beauty of getting you in here today, hopefully Andy Ryan before the end of the week is out, and there's a couple of other people that I have thereabouts. So ideally I'd record maybe 10 in the next fortnight. That would be kind of ideal, which would give me a bit of breathing space, because herself is due to drop a sprog now in the next fortnight. So between that,
best of luck with that.
Cheers. But between that, the business, the conversations that I'm having with people, the commitment that I've made to do.
You're inundated at the moment.
So. I am a bit, hence the 4 o'clock starts. You know, kind of way. But look, it's great, and when you're doing something, when you're doing something you're passionate about, you know this. I mean, you must get a kick out of having these conversations, and even just maybe even coming here and getting your point across to maybe a slightly larger audience. Yeah.
Like I've had the thing. It's never an "I told you so" kind of thing, because all of the things that I feel like I'd be discovering on me journeys of discovery, trying to understand things. A lot of the things that are hard to swallow, I don't like being the bearer of bad news, you know, but these things, it's like we're all like a light, you know, and there's so many dark little corners, and the only way you can expose them is to speak of them and to talk of them, you know. And if you might be a little bit off the mark on how you interpret something or misinterpret something, usually there's no smoke without fire. There's usually always some good reason to be in a particular area, but sometimes things can be exaggerated. And like some of the topics I might bring up there, it's as if sometimes they're exacerbated and they're exaggerated to try and discredit the fact that there is something to them. Do you know what I mean? That there is something to the likes of weather modification, you know? Like if you're going to look at the global warming thing, you really should be taking into account that they're spraying aerosols in the sky the whole time. Whether they are or they aren't, it's another debate, but they have been doing it for generations in different places, like where they had the paddy fields to create rain. If Russia is having a military day parade, they'll seed the clouds and make sure that they don't have rain, you know. So they can do these things. And like if you don't have to destabilize countries by going in with tanks and bombs and guns, some of these lunatics will choose the more subtle option, you know.
No, absolutely, and we saw that bore out in the last presidential election in the States, where there was basically a social media campaign to promote one party over the other.
Yeah.
And like that's mind control that's happening and is demonstrable and is kind of going on, and there's nothing. It is conspiratorial, but people do conspire.
Oh yes.
You know, that kind of way. And I wouldn't consider myself a conspiracy theorist by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
But people do conspire. That's just the reality of the situation. And the downside I feel for the likes of David Icke, who rattles on about lizard people pulling strings, and that is, he discredits people like you.
Yeah,
because people go, oh, your man Coogie, yeah, sure, he's fucking one of those David Icke guys, you know, and you can't, no matter, even if you told him that 2 and 2 was equal to 4,
doesn't matter,
they'd kind of go, oh geez, I'm starting to doubt that now. If you believe that, then maybe it's not 4, you know.
Oh, like the level, like it's cool for people to think you're mad, you know, but like when you're talking about certain topics and you've got an informed angle to bring, and someone's just shutting it down, basically repeating the general official narrative, you know, like it can be mind numbing sometimes. There's times I've got annoyed at people, you know, because there'll be something I'd be certain I know is fact. Now the whole story might be, but I'd be saying, let's say, like fluoride is a neurotoxin. That's a fact. And someone's saying, oh, that's fucking crazy shit. Fluoride, sure, we need it for our teeth and all that stuff. No, but it is. Oh, you're fucking mad, you fucking tinfoil head, you know. But like conspiracy theorists was a label created by the CIA after John F. Kennedy was shot. Like they created that label, and that's another fact. So what happened after that then is that every time anybody says anything that might be highlighting that there's nefarious activities going on or there's insidious actions being carried out by government in the shadows, you're automatically just, once the label's conspiracy theorist is put on someone, it automatically discredits them in a lot of people's eyes, and they don't want to hear anymore. You know, you've got the label, you've got the tinfoil hat, you're mad, forget about it. So it was one of the greatest moves the CIA ever made. Like the CIA is a heinous organisation. Most alphabet institutions are, from what I can see. I wouldn't trust any of them. But the FBI doesn't seem to be as bad. But the CIA, like they're involved in so much stuff. Like I was even watching a documentary on Sky Arts the other night, Bob Marley documentary, and it was actually a fantastic documentary because some girl that he hung around with, she was taking pictures of him for a few years, and she followed him around, himself and Pete Tosh and the Wailers and stuff, and she got a lot of footage where the lads are just sitting around like this, chatting, you know.
Yeah.
I'd be a big fan of Bob, but like just talking about like the cars broke down, and he's saying, I think it might be the battery, or it might be, they're just having normal conversations. And they're talking about different things, but it was a great insight. It was a fantastic insight into just the man's life, you know. But something led me to that, saying the Bob Marley thing now. There was a reason why I went to that. Oh yeah. And there was a part in the documentary where they were flying, they wanted to go, even though he was uprising as a fantastic singer then, he was still being treated badly. Like he wasn't being, when he went to certain countries to play, they weren't putting him up in nice places or any of this stuff. Especially predominantly white countries, there was still like this kind of anti-black thing going on, you know. But she was saying that there was a bit of an unstable environment in Jamaica at the time, and just fleetingly in the conversation, the general consensus, she says, was that a lot of Jamaican people believed that the CAA were after coming in there and they were causing this destabilization to try and get some kind of a change of leadership, you know, which is what they do, you know. It's what they do. But like you look at the likes of what's happening with, like, even if you don't listen to the news, you hear all the crack about the Russians interfering in American democracy and all that stuff, you know. Like, there's been no evidence, absolutely none whatsoever anywhere, that Russia was interfering, but there's evidence to show that the DNC have been interfered with and the votes are rigged there by the likes of Hillary Clinton to make sure Bernie Sanders didn't get the election, you know, that he wasn't put up against Trump. And if Bernie Sanders were put up against Trump, he would have won hands down, absolutely hands down. I wouldn't be a big fan of Bernie myself, but he would have won. There's no shadow of a doubt about it.
Yeah, I don't think he's the hated character that Clinton is.
Oh, not a bit of it. No, there's not a bit of it. Clinton is, like, people were saying that it was chauvinistic and bigoted, and all these trigger words now these days. It's like, what did they say? Chauvinist, misogynist, bigoted, homophobes, all these kind of particular labels now. If you're labelled with that, you don't have a say in anything, you know. But like, there was the fact of the matter is, Hillary Clinton, a lot of people know that she's very, very evil woman, you know. She's a very evil woman.
Evil was the word that was in my head before you said it.
She's done some terrible things, you know, whether it's Libya or Benghazi or the likes of the email scandals or what happened with the DNC. Like, the woman should be in prison, you know. The fact that she's not in prison is insane, you know. It's insane. Like,
just to say nothing of her charity,
the
Clinton Foundation.
But like, even look last week, like, there was the big story about Oxfam, you know. Like, we have here, people went mental here at the start of the year because your man in McDonald's, some paedophile, was arranging to meet a lad that worked at McDonald's in Navan. He was arranging to meet some girls.
That I did see.
Yeah, like, that went viral. That went everywhere, you know.
Yeah, even I got to see that. What's your views on that now? Not to go off on a different tangent, but
well, it's kind of it can be all interrelated in some way, shape, or form. I'm here for connecting dots, you know. I just connect dots. If they can't even be connected, I find an angle to connect them somehow, you know. But like, you look at, people are so passionate about protecting kids. Obviously, we all have children. We love them. They're innocent, and anything that can be done to them is horrific.
Yeah, it's innate in us, or at least should be. It's innate in us.
Yeah, it's innate in us. So when you see that, it just horrifies you. This man was working in the kids in McDonald's, and he was serving our children and all this stuff, and it's horrific. And what he was planning to do is horrific, and he deserves to be hung, drawn, and quartered, right? But there's this passion against child abuse in every community. We all have a fear in our bones. It could be our next door neighbour. You don't let your kids out of your sight because, God forbid, there might be a paedophile around the corner that'll pick them up and throw them in a car, you know. So you live in this constant state of fear as a parent, that you want to keep your kids protected. So when you see things like the McDonald's, man, people are up in arms and they're going crazy. And like, these paedophile hunters, I kind of like what they're doing, because the guards can't, like, in England, the guards are thanking them because the guards can't deal with what's going on at the level of it over there. Like, the guards over there say 80,000 IP addresses a day access child porn and download it, but they don't have the resources to deal with it. So the paedophile hunters are being welcomed there. In Ireland, they're being told to stop. And like, on one hand, people are saying they shouldn't record it live. You know, they shouldn't record it live. But their argument is that they have all the evidence already, and everybody that they have encountered have all got jailed because they have the evidence to prove that they tried to solicit sex with or to get with a child, a minor. But when you look at what happened last week with Oxfam, did you hear about Oxfam?
No.
Well, Oxfam, basically, there's a big scandal now involving Oxfam where they said that they were meant to be procuring prostitutes. Some of them might have been underage, but a lot of people who were volunteers.
Who were?
Volunteers for Oxfam workers that were working over in Haiti specifically.
Okay.
So
they were doing this with the Oxfam badge on them, representing Oxfam.
Yeah. Now the story is kind of, it seems to be filtered a little bit in the mainstream that it was prostitutes, and they're not saying and specifying whether they're underage prostitutes. But it turns out, when you look at the statistics, like even in the UN, there were statistics released there only a few days ago. It seems like all this seems to be coming to the fore now. We're like 6,600 child rapes have happened by employees, by something like 3,000 rapes or something, 6,000 different employees or something like that over a 10-year period. So these are UN
within
workers.
Oxfam.
No, this was UN workers. This
Okay,
was a
sorry.
separate story. But the Oxfam story is basically following that they were procuring prostitutes. Some of them may have been underage. And what happened was some of them were meant to have been basically prosecuted in these countries under their country's laws for abusing children. And Oxfam done the church thing that the church did here. They basically just moved them off and shipped them off to another village. You know,
Jesus
they
Christ.
didn't get rid of them. They didn't do nothing like that. Now there's no vetting, there's no nothing into these Oxfam institutions. But I'm going a very roundabout way to say this. We're very protective of our children, and when you hear about paedophilia, that's why the church is people are disgusted with it here. They just automatically tarnish all priests with the same brush, you know, which they aren't. You have to be fair to a lot of these priests. To be good men, a lot of them. But it's the ultimate thing that really stirs the emotion in us, you know. And you look at Haiti, and you see the Clinton Foundation, and you see the millions and millions and millions that they got in donations for Haiti, and you see that maybe 2-4 houses were built. Like, the money was seen nowhere. Where the money went, God only knows. They don't know where the money went, but there was no money invested in Haiti, and it's worse there than it was before. There's been no rebuilding of the place, and there's a massive amount of children like going missing from the place. You know, like 8 million children a year die or disappear. Annually, every year, 8 million children just vanish without a trace.
8 million?
8 million.
What's the population of Haiti?
No, 8 million over the globe.
Okay, sorry.
Over
okay.
the globe. But like Haiti is just one part of it. And like the conspiracy nutbags like myself would look around, we'd look around at all these war-torn areas like Syria and Libya and Afghanistan, and you look at what's happened in them countries, who's destabilised them countries, and now who's profiting from them countries. And then you look at these supposed charitable organisations, you know, like realistically, them men who joined the church and went on to rape loads of young boys and girls and stuff like that, they weren't holy men. They had no attachment to any faith. They just seen the church was this God Almighty institution that nobody questioned. It trumped all others, really. It just had serious power. So this is where we get access to vulnerable kids coming in and confessing us, telling us their problems and stuff like that. Orphan kids, you go to the industrial schools and stuff like that. Kids that were caught robbing bags of coal down the docks or something like that, as Damo Dempsey sung about, and they end up in Let or Frack or something. They're getting abused by someone. So these men, these types of people levitate to these positions where they have access to vulnerable kids. And once we keep on setting up institutions like that, like what the church was, and giving them this ultimate power to have unlimited, unvetted and unchecked access to vulnerable children, you're going to have all these sickos levitating to them positions, you know, because they know they have it.
You are, but what's worse than the fact that it happened is that it was allowed happen.
Oh,
and it
yeah.
was allowed continue.
Yeah.
And a priest that was in a particular village in Ireland, say, or small town, that was suspected of molesting children was moved to another unsuspecting village.
Yeah.
And to another. And to another.
Yeah.
And to another.
Because you keep abusing, yeah. Poor innocent young kids constantly getting destroyed.
No, absolutely. But
And it looks like Oxfam were doing the same thing.
Jesus Christ.
They were doing the same thing, yeah. Like there's a very like, you see, I've came across, like, there's things I'd be afraid to speak about, but I'll venture into them anyway. But I wouldn't know. I can't say it with certainty. But when you follow all these leads and you hear victims of abuse, survivors of abuse, you know, adults now who've come out and they're telling their stories and stuff like that, like some of the things that have gone on, you know, like there was this Franklin credit union scandal in America back in the 80s or the 70s, where this senator, he sang for the president a couple of times. What was his name? Jesus Christ, his name is real. There was someone that was really... There's a guy on RT now. There's a news presenter on RT now. He's really old. But anyway, he has the same name as this guy from years ago.
Okay.
And he was chairman of this credit union. And he was really in with the Democratic Party, I think. And he was at all these, he sang the national anthem for the president and for big baseball games and stuff like that. So he was well up there. But it turns out he was a child abuser. He was a child abuser. But this Franklin Credit Union in America, where the hell was it in America? There was a massive child abusing ring going on, paedophile ring going on at the time. And he was majorly involved in it. And he ended up subsequently getting jailed for doing things to kids and stuff like that. But when you look at these connections, wherever you go to power and hierarchy, there's so much of that world lying in the background. And it's actually not lying in the background, it's up at the forefront. And it's like, I could never understand. I came across it all through the years every time I go down certain rabbit holes, whether it was the media or the banking institutions or Hollywood or whatever it was. You kept on hitting these scandals and stories of kids being abused, like Corey Feldman out of the Goonies, and your man out of Beavis and Butthead came out there last week. Remember the blondie fella, not Keanu Reeves, the other dude?
Right.
He came out, he was on one of the shows, and he was saying because of the whole Harvey Weinstein thing, and people are coming out and they're able to talk about stuff now that he felt he was able to talk, but back then he wasn't. But he was saying that there was massive grouping of twisted fuckers in the Hollywood movie circles, you know, and the kids were being exploited within that, you know. So there's so much, and like I couldn't understand it. I couldn't get my head around it. Like, why? How do these people get into these positions? And then you see that they're probably easily compromised. So you have a man who has a penchant for little kids, and you get him with a little kid and get a picture of him. Well, if he's going to be a president of a country, or if he's going to be a secretary, treasury office or something like that, he's compromisable by his habits, you know, his personal habits. And if they have evidence of him, he'd probably do and say anything they could do, you know. Like I heard a man years ago, an old Lord of House, Tim Fortescue, like, it's, the recording is live, you could get it there if you wanted now, where he spoke about how Parliament worked, you know, and that he was part of the whip system, and they'd try and clean up scandals and messes that were happening for any kind of MP or anything like that. And he was just basically talking candidly on a BBC documentary about how they did their job, and he was saying basically if there was any problem with drugs or prostitution or even like some kind of scandal with little boys or anything like that, he says we'd sweep it under the carpet, you know, and we'd get it covered up, and he says, and then that'll be brownie points for us later on when we want to get something. So this is what goes on, you know, and that's why these people, I'd always think, like, where does Obama appear from? Where do these people just, you don't hear about them, and the next minute they're there, and they're like the leaders of the free world, and you're like, where the hell is this fella? I know people were saying he was from Kenya and he was from all these different places, but there's so much going on, and it seems to me like it's all a theatre, you know? It's all like a play acting out, and we're all so enchanted by it all. And I kind of fed into it for years there by shining the light on politics so much, and I think I was actually playing into the hands of the deception, you know, because we're all so involved now because Trump and Brexit and all these things, you know. People are really involved in politics, and we probably need to step away from politics.
Well, that's exactly what I think I've done.
Yeah.
I only said it to Anthony on the podcast the other night. We got talking about this idea of politics. I actually mentioned that the point that we were talking about was people say that the two things that you shouldn't talk about are religion and politics, and my point was that the only two things worth talking about.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, you know, what we believe in and how we run our society.
Yeah.
And he kind of disagreed with me because there was a bit of a cross wire. He said, "Oh, look, he has just no interest in politics," and what he thought I meant was party politics. And I don't have any interest in all that, and that's why I've just completely ignored it. I admitted to him, I couldn't have told you. He told me that Fine Gael were in power with someone else. I couldn't have even told you who was in power. That's how little involvement I have in politics.
Right, yeah, that's healthy. It's healthy as well, you know.
But
the party political side of things,
I completely ignore it. I completely ignore the papers. I completely ignore the news. I completely ignore television, radio. I completely ignore all of that because that's just all fucking bullshit. The whole lot of it. All of it.
Yeah.
Without exception, it's all nonsense. And it's a distraction from these kind of conversations.
Yeah.
That I'm having with you and that I'm having with everybody else. And until you get an understanding of the world that you live in, outside of what's in the fucking papers, because that's just... it just distracts you from the core elements of what's going on around you. Do you know that
Yeah.
kind of way? It's a distraction,
part of
essentially.
the disconnect, nearly. It
Very
nearly
much
is.
so, very much so. And the deeper you go into that, the more, political you think you are,
Yeah.
the less political you are. Like,
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
people who consider themselves political and people who love politics, and including politicians, and they don't know the difference between the right and the left. They don't
Yeah.
know what conservatism is, essentially, and what liberalism is, and its evolutionary reason for being there in the first place.
Yeah.
And if you don't understand it, if you don't understand the dynamic between being left-leaning or right-leaning, if you can't articulate what the left and what the right is, you've no fucking business commenting on politics, least alone being a fucking politician.
Yeah.
And I'd love to poll politicians to see how many of them
lot
have a
of them-
fucking
A
notion.
lot of them haven't a clue.
I'd
Like, that's
imagine
another
most,
thing.
if not all of them, haven't a clue.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised now. Like, there's like years ago, were politicians not like people like me or you, who decided we want to do some good for our country and community, and you get involved for a few years, and then you just go back to your job.
See,
But now they're career politicians. They're all career fucking politicians, and they're getting like pensions out of it and all this crazy shit. You know?
I think that you've hit the nail on the head, and I've mentioned that myself.
Yeah.
On the podcast, on the record, this idea of a career politician, that's what's wrong with politics generally.
Yeah, absolutely. They're going into it there like it's a job for life. You're
Well,
meant to
that's
literally.
exactly what it is.
Yeah, and that's why I was interested at direct democracy before, because you go in, you make a few promises, the people like them, they give you your vote, you follow through on them, or you get the fuck out. It's like that. That's kind of the way it is. And I know it's easier said than done, especially when you're living in the EU and you have diktats above your government itself, kind of infringing on your ability to enforce policies that you might want to enforce. But like it was just something that kind of appealed to me, because these career politicians are a big problem. They're a massive problem.
Of course,
you know?
their first and practically only remit is getting re-elected.
Yeah.
Because
And
that's what they do. Their job, like, if you're a career politician, your job is to get re-elected.
Yeah.
Everything else is kind of, secondary. I saw it working in sales. Your job was to hit your target. You could come in late, you could leave early, you could, sexually harass the fucking receptionist for all anyone cared. So long as you were hitting your fucking target,
Yeah.
no one gave a fuck.
Yeah.
And politics is the same. As long as you're getting re-elected, thumbs up all round.
Yeah. No, it's pretty sad. It's terrible. It's a quagmire, you know. There's no, it can't progress anywhere. And like the sad thing about Ireland is, like, what do we have as an alternative? Like, all we've ever had is the right. It's conservative. Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil. Since the inception of the state, that's all we've had. There's been no other party. So we've never really had a left, you know.
I actually said...
And the left we have now is shit.
Well, I posed that exact same question to Anthony there the other day. Not that he's overtly political, but he mentioned Labour being the leftist of the parties, I suppose. And they would be, even though it's in the name Labour, and that they're, pro-unions and pro-the workers. So they'd be the leftist of the lot, or the most socialist of the lot, would they?
Yeah.
Again, no, I'm not into it, so I don't know.
That's the label they fell under, but they destroyed that over the last with their amalgamation with Fine Gael there. There's no way they can still stand under that banner, you know. Like Joan Burton, big smiley head on her cutting a ribbon on a soup shop, as if it's the best achievement she's had. Like, what a gobshite, Like, it's like the Twilight Zone. It's like the Twilight Zone. And then we have the likes of Paul Murphy, who's like a Bolshevik cultural Marxist lover, and then you have Ruth Coppinger, who's just a tyrant, She's like one of these, dare I say, feminazis, She's like there, like that's why I said here, like, did you ever hear of the Frankfurt School of Political Correctness?
No, we got distracted there. What is that?
You should check that place out, because like it's the influence it's had on the world we live in today. Because like you think personally that there has been nefarious elements behind what's driven us to where we are today, but we've embraced a lot of it, and I agree with you on that, because we have, but there's been the influence, I think, has been more. It's been more forceful than we'd like to imagine, but it's just because it's been dragged out over such a long period of time, through generations, it's very hard to notice these things.
It's not as obvious.
It's very hard, but that's why the times we're living in now, opportunities are they're abundant, because we're seeing all of the shit for what it is. And as we're seeing that, every time we see it, like, that's why we're here having this conversation. Like, you felt the need to do this. Like, 8 years ago, you mightn't have felt the need, or most people wouldn't. But we're starting to see, and there does seem to be this mass awakening. But it's all, like, I think it started early 1900s, like after World War One. I can't remember the name of some Frank or some Marx fella. And in Frankfurt they started to have a think tank. So basically they wanted to try and propel cultural Marxism, and they wanted to try and force the ideals, right? So they felt like they were being ruled by a bourgeoisie kind of ruling class, and they thought, as the left, they create this paradigm where they have an alternative, and they try and force, like, what was it, cultural terrorism. Like, that's a quotation from cultural terrorism.
Okay.
So basically they'd undermine Western values, all Western values, and they'd undermine the family, they'd undermine the Western economy and stuff like that was one thing, but they undermined
facts and
family and science and stuff like that. Yeah, so they were coming from an angle where basically their way or no way, and their left-leaning ideologies seem, in hindsight, to seem more right-leaning than anything. But they were to try and propel the rights, gay rights, to try and muddy the waters between male and female, that there isn't actually a natural sex, it's a cultural creation, you know, that there isn't really man and woman, you know?
There's no biological differences between the sexes.
So like these things were meted out and they were spoken about and they were discussed in this Frankfurt school way back in 1930s or 40s maybe it was. And then something happened there. The Nazis came in World War II and they had to move from there, and they went over to America, and they ended up setting up base somewhere in America. Can't remember whereabouts in America. And from there on forth, they started to infect America with this cultural Marxist ideologies. And basically, they were to undermine the family unit. Do you know what I mean? To basically raise gay rights, raise the feminist movement, all of these movements that came along, that ultimately, great that gay people get the rights and get acknowledged, because they should be. Everyone's entitled to love who they want to love. You know, there's no question or doubt about that. But like you have that school of political correctness, that's what they call it, the school of political correctness. And now we're living in the time that Jordan B. Peterson feels the need to be standing up against this political correctness, because he can see it, and that it's actually skewing our ability to progress as natural beings, men and women, and being able to disagree with each other, and the right to be offended. All these things, we're entitled to these rights. I'm entitled to disagree with you here. We'll bang heads on things and we won't fully agree on things, and we'll disagree on things. That's a right we're all fully entitled to have, and it's a very important right to retain. But this Frankfurt school, its ultimate aim was to extinguish that. And like Saul Alinsky, if I remember correctly, he was a lecturer in that school, and he, like Hillary Clinton and Obama, were disciples of his. Like, they loved him, they absolutely loved him. So all of his teachings, if you look up Saul Alinsky, you see his teachings. You look at reference from Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, they'll make reference to Saul, how he was so influential in the way they taught, you know. So then you fast forward now to this insanity we're in now, where you're not even allowed to use gender pronouns like he or she, or, do you know what I mean, that if you want to identify as a man today, you can identify as a man. Like, did I see right some bloke identified as a woman, and he went in and he joined an MMA tournament and he kicked the living shit out of all the women.
I've heard Rogan speak about him or her.
Yeah,
like into the murky waters of,
like, all the
pervs
will just say, "Yeah, I'm a woman. I'm going to go into the girls' bathroom, you know, so I can see a load of ditties." I'd try that one. I'd try that one. But like, you're leaving, like, it's like there's this skewing of reality, and we've kids growing up. We don't want them to be confused about things that there's no need to be confused about.
Yeah, there's enough to be confused about without being confused about things like that.
Yeah, so like, if you look into your jocks and you've got a penis, you're a man, and if you don't, you're a woman. And then whatever you think after that is a psychological thing. It's not a biological thing, you know. You're biologically male or female. End of story. But now in the biggest universities like Yale and Oxford, they're starting to knock people down if they use he or she in a thesis, you know.
You kind of asked there earlier on, like, where are the leaders of all these countries coming from, and the leaders of America are coming from these schools, the Ivy League schools, which has been affected by this far left ideology, I suppose.
Yeah. And like, it's taken over now. And like, the left is meant to be liberal, it's meant to be understanding, you know. But it's not really. And like, when you see all these agendas being pushed out, it's not the trans community pushing them, and it's not the homosexual community, it's not the LGBT community pushing them. I don't know who's pushing them.
It's people who claim to represent those.
Yeah, and they're
it,
claiming...
it's this idea, it's this identity politics again.
Yeah.
I'm a gay man and I think this shouldn't happen, and as a gay man I speak for the LGBT community.
Yeah.
No, you fucking don't.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
Exactly, yeah.
Not all gay people are the fucking same, so you don't speak for shit other than yourself.
Yourself, exactly, yeah. And that's what we have now. We have these people with agendas, and then there's industries growing from these movements. So with the industries growing from them, it's in their best vested interest to make sure that they kind of steamroll this madness into even further.
Yeah, diversity
insanity.
Training and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Have you followed the James Damore thing?
No, what's that?
Yeah, he loved that. James Damore was a guy, a Google engineer. So he was working at Google as an engineer, working there for years, excelling as an employee, top marks, getting his bonuses, got his promotions, the perfect employee, and your real stereotypical kind of computer scientist, semi-autistic kind of guy.
Okay,
introverted, kept to himself, IQ off the fucking charts, and he, as part of his job, he had to undergo, I think it was diversity training, whereby he was being taught this idea that men and women are kind of equal and there's no differences between the sexes, and this kind of the same kind of thing that you're speaking of there. And they asked for feedback, and in typical Google engineer mode, he heard, you want feedback? Okay, I'll give you feedback. Most of us, with the social skills, when we hear we want feedback from our employer, we know that means tell us how brilliant we are, and don't tell us what's wrong. Do you know that kind of way? But as a real analytical type guy, there's no nuance there. He heard they wanted feedback, so he gave his feedback. And he was very well versed in a lot of what Jordan Peterson talks about, the psychological differences between men and women. Yeah. And wrote about this very scientifically, very concisely, and basically raised his concerns. And what he was saying was basically, he was giving the scientific reasoning why there aren't more women in tech, say. And on top of that, he gave a couple of examples of how they could change things to encourage more women in. So, not a sexist remotely, as is clear by his memo that he wrote. So he submitted the memo for feedback, heard nothing of it, submitted it to another group, an internal Google group, to get a bit of feedback, because he didn't hear anything back from it originally. It bounced around internally with Google for a long time, and then someone leaked it and it went viral, and he was basically painted as this big sexist,
bigoted, chauvinistic pig. Yeah
exactly, and sacked for it. Now, he is a big whopping lawsuit against Google for it, and that's still to kind of play out.
Fruition,
yeah, exactly. But he, I think, is the canary in the coal mine for this type of ideology that's apparently rapidly spreading through not only universities but organisations generally across the States. And yourself, it happens there and then it feeds out to the rest of us.
Yeah, like one of the students I had in, not last summer, the summer before, he was a gay lad. He was working with me, and great summer with each other because he was into politics and he was into activism. So we hit it off straight away. So we were able to talk about other stuff. He was really interested in like social issues, but I brought up the whole concept of this whole fuddy-duddy in the lines between. I was asking what it was like in school, and he was saying like some of his friends, see, because they're activists, I was thinking,
oh my bad, I'm after breaking my own rule.
Ah yes.
Fuck.
Hello.
Apologies to everybody listening and yourself.
He's some boy, Fran, isn't he? Huh? Him years at it and he's still at this crack. But he was telling me that there's some of his friends, like he had, let's say, two friends, a girl and a boy, who were boyfriend and girlfriend. And because she was so wrapped up in this whole because it's in the universities where they're infecting these future minds of the world. This is where they're infecting them, and these unions that they have, they're getting in with this political correctness, and they're making them think, yeah, this is right. And then they have little calm rooms. They have like rooms where they go and they hug each other, and
safe spaces.
Yeah, and like there's people who are in colleges now, like in Yale. If you're going to study fucking criminal psychology, you know what I mean? They're telling you before you have a lecture where they're going to show you like, or maybe, what do they call them? Forensic detectives. People who are training to be forensic detectives. Now you might want to leave this class because there's going to be pictures of dead bodies, and there's going to be pictures of.
And you mightn't be able to handle
And you might be able to handle it, so if you think it's too tough, you can leave.
And you studying to be a state pathologist or
Yeah,
something.
like, what the hell, man? I know it's terrible to tarnish all these young people with the same brush, but I remember Martin telling me at the time, he says that this couple, like, she did not want to be viewed as a she, you know? And when anybody called her he, or called her she says, no, I'm a they. I'm a they? So she wanted to be referred to as a they out of respect for the 0.00001% chance that there might be a transsexual in the room, with the 0.0001% chance that he might give a fuck, you know, or she might give a fuck, you know, like it's insanity. It's insanity. But what it's doing is it's attacking our language and the way that we interact with each other, and it's censoring us. We're censoring ourselves. They're trying to make us censor ourselves, so we're afraid to say anything. God forbid it might offend somebody. But I think all of this madness, it's as if this has been worked on for years. As I'm conspiracy head, I think it's a big conspiracy behind everything, you know. And I think we're being led to a place where we'll penultimately end up like the Chinese, you know, just little worker drones, you know, that just get up and do our work every day, and we walk between the lines, and like that's where it's kind of leading to. But while it gets to these last final stages, I think that the opportunities are becoming so evident to all of us, and it's an unbelievably important time to be alive. I honestly believe, that's why I went on me discovery and went on me ranting and raving for years. I really honestly believe we're the generation that's been gifted probably the only chance humanity has ever had of being completely free, because
Could not agree with you more.
it's definitely like we're living in that time. And us 30-somethings, like the boys in their 20s and the teenagers, I know they want to have fun. I don't
They're
wanna
off kicking it.
yeah, I don't
like
want
we
to.
did.
Yeah, and they should be, you know. But and then the people who are up over 40 and 50, they're probably busy and they're probably getting older and stuff like that. But us
But
men
they don't have
and
the
women,
access to the internet that we do.
no, and we're somewhat savvy with it, you know.
Yeah, big time, because this is something that's come up a couple of times. We both grew up without it and with it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Exactly, yeah.
So we had childhoods.
Yeah,
We
sure did.
were
yeah.
the last generation. Like, we're in our early to mid 30s. So
Yeah.
we're the last generation of people on this planet to have grown up with an actual childhood, the same that our species
parents
has
did.
enjoyed for
Yeah.
you know, hundreds if not
Generations,
thousands of
yeah,
years, generations literally.
Yeah.
And yeah,
It's gone now.
I'd be inclined to agree absolutely 100%.
Like I
we're
just
we're
say
the
to
start of it, like.
yeah, we are the start of it.
And
you
the
know?
people listening, use cunts.
Yeah, use listening. You're a part of this as well, you know.
Absolutely.
Like
yeah.
I know you like to drink. I know we're Irish, and it's good to have the crack, you know. But when you're in the pub, don't be afraid to bring up an odd topic of might make people a little bit uncomfortable. But don't go doing a coogie on them. Just don't go doing a coogie on them now. But like, you can subtly plant seeds in people's heads, and that's what we're saying. Like this time we're living in now, there's so many opportunities to point out that things are being ran by the wrong people, you know. And like everywhere you go, like I know so many people from working and gigging and playing sports and having kids who are involved in all these things, and I've travelled around. I haven't travelled the world. I can't wait to travel the world. First place would be Peru in a tent with ayahuasca.
With me and Ivor.
Yeah, with yourself and Ivor. That'd be brilliant. Jeez, we had some conversation then. But like, we have a chance to do something about it, you know. So we really should apply ourselves, and we should try and participate and try and get involved, because it is really us. We're the ones we've been waiting for. And like, I personally see only a short window. I think the opportunities are there now, but I think the window is being closed with this whole attack on fake news, you know. Like, most of the people who are dealing out the fake news are the news channels who are sending out journalists to become the adjudicators on what's fake news or not, you know. And like the people from CNN and that, they peddle such propaganda, it's unbelievable, you know. It's unbelievable. But it's going to be those ones who are going to decide what's true and what's not. So in the meantime, you have platforms like what you're doing here now, Fran, and you're getting some people talking about things, but you can see down the line that all this stuff will be shut down if it's not basically towing the official narrative, the official line. Censorship is steamrolling our way, and the big problem is that we've all been corralled into like Facebook, Twitter, Google, Amazon, and they're the main platforms online. Like, the internet is a vast thing. People can still set up their own websites and do their own thing, but we've been corralled into these different platforms, and now they're starting to regulate them. You know, they're starting to regulate them. They're starting to censor out any material that might be like anti-Israel, you know. Like I have a serious bone of contention with Israel and the way they behave, and the Palestinians and where they're treated, and then the interlinkedness of that with America and the creations of ISIS and all these different things that have destabilized the whole Middle East area. And like what we have now is we have an influx of refugees fleeing these war-torn countries. None of them want to leave their countries, you know. Nobody wants to leave their home. They all liked it. The Syrians loved Syria. Was a great place before we got involved, you know. So if we want to make things better, we have to start recognising that there's a couple of tyrants that really like war and they need war. And I'd love to just say to anybody who considers joining the army, please don't join the army, you know, because that's the forefront of it. And like, you hear all these military men coming home and they're depressed and they're not getting looked after by the British government or the American government, and they end up homeless on the streets, and you get no...
And the only substances that can fucking cure their PTSD are illegal.
Yeah, and they're all ending up addicts, you know? Addicts, homeless, like...
Addicts to the fucking opioid fields that they were out fighting to protect in Afghanistan.
Yeah, and like, that's what happened with that, you know? Afghanistan, like, the whole opiate trade just went through the roof after we invaded Afghanistan. And the Americans were...
Is it 90% of where all the pharmaceutical grade...
yeah, it is.
Medical grade heroin comes from basically the poppy fields in Afghanistan.
Yeah, and like you can see, there's soldiers still manning them fields at the moment. You know, still to this day, like there's some unbelievable atrocities carried out by the West. And like, as we were saying earlier, America's only a couple of 100 years old, yet every other country in the West is becoming Americanized. This country that was born of blood and genocide of the native peoples, that had so much to offer, spiritual understanding them Native Americans had, you know, like they had so much to offer. And the mad thing about the Indians is, like that book I was telling you about, Bury My Heart, The Wounded Knee, I haven't drank much as much as I used to since I read that book, because they put up some fight. They put up because they knew the plains, you know, and they understood the plains.
They
and
knew
even
the lay of the land.
Yeah, they knew the lay of the land, and even though they hadn't the guns and everything, they still were able to intercept them and cut them off, and they were able to resist what was happening so much.
But they were decimated by disease more than anything, weren't they? Was it 85-90% of them were wiped out by colds and flus and
yeah,
such?
And then drink. When they introduced whiskey to them, so they all ended up killing each other, sure, nearly. You know, drink was a big part of it.
Yeah.
And you can look at our drink culture here. Like, I don't know, like, I know that guy. I'm looking forward to hearing Mythical Ireland guy. Like, I kind of touched off Michael Sarian a few years ago. Have you heard of Michael Sarian?
No.
He was an Irish guy, a Northern Irish guy, but he delves into all mythological tales of Ireland, and not just Ireland, but he's a firm believer that we are one of the most ancient races on the planet, you know, and that lost city of Atlantis is somewhere between, he believes in Atlantis, that it's between Ireland and America, and the seas were lower, it existed, and that we are the descendants of that land, and all these kind of things. Like, there's so much you could delve into. Like, I'm thinking stuff here when I'm talking to you, and stuff is popping me in and thinking, oh, I have to talk about that, and then I'm just forgetting about them all.
Well, listen, I'm conscious now of herself having rang me there because she knows that I'm out here, and her due to pop and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But listen, what
have we done? Have we done the 3 hours yet?
We've done 3:15.
Oh, we did Janie.
And I
Brilliant.
can't help but feel that we've only scratched the surface.
Yeah, like,
so if you've an appetite for this kind of shit, man, you're more than welcome back.
I love waffling, you know. I love waffling. So.
But that's the thing, it's by no means waffle.
Yeah, because it's not too often you get to talk about these things. Like, I was around with a friend, as I was saying yesterday, in Clonmellon, an old friend of mine I played music with. He's originally from Ballymun, but he's living out in the most picturesque, beautiful part of the country you'd ever see, you know. It's some change for him, you know, from the big smoke out there with his wife and his child. But we were chatting, and it was a good while since I'd had a really deep conversation with someone like I did yesterday, you know. And it was kind of a nice little prerequisite to what I was doing with you here today. I kind of broke the mold a little bit, so it's nice because you can't be annoying people with this stuff the whole time. But this is on a 3-hour podcast now. I've touched off a lot of things. There's so much more I could touch off, but like, people can follow up whatever they want, you know. I'm vaguely giving you what I've interpreted from a lot of these things. Dates and specifics could be wrong, but there's nothing I would have said today that isn't founded in some kind of reality
No,
that we're living
absolutely.
in today.
The sentiment is there, and I would put
Yeah.
it this way.
And people can check out whatever they want, yeah.
Put it this way, I wouldn't be inviting you back on if I thought that you were full of shite. Do you know what I mean? To put it plainly. So if you've been listening to this, I'm just going to repeat what I said basically when you went to the Jacks earlier. If you've been listening to this, if this is resonating with you, if you're maybe shaking your head in disbelief that you didn't realise that any of this was going on, you know, talk to a friend about it, maybe share it, maybe send it to someone specifically, share it from your own Facebook page or whatever. Do your bit, get involved, get talking. That's if this is all new to you. If we're just singing off the same hymn sheet as you, maybe fucking go one step further and maybe contact me. Maybe you want to come on. Maybe you think Rory's full of shite. Maybe you think you think I'm full of shite. We don't want this podcast to become an echo chamber of people, like-minded people, just blowing smoke up each other's arses. It's supposed to provoke conversations. It's supposed to be a bit adversarial at times, and that's what's going to change things. It's starting the debate at least, and we're not looking to burn it all to the ground. We're not looking to change everything in the next 6 months. Incremental steps, bit by bit. Be part of your own fucking future.
And
your
knowledge is
future.
power.
And knowledge is power. And
it is.
I think you put it as best as it can be put. We are who you've been waiting for.
Yeah.
And I don't mean me and fucking Coogie. I mean everyone listening.
Yeah.
Every man, woman and child listening to this. You're the person that you've been waiting for.
Yeah, there's no point in depending on anybody else, you know. It's your life. It's here and now, and that's it. You know, you can do what you want. And I know you can't fix the world in a day, but you can at least start trying to understand it a bit better, you know. You can try and understand it a bit better.
Absolutely.
And some things like this, I'm really looking forward to hearing the other podcasts now, Fran, because I'm after getting away to load them. That Pod of Magic. Yeah,
that's getting them
down.
Working
well with me. It's getting them down fast, you know.
Happy days. Well, listen, it should be on all podcast platforms. If any of you listening are aware of a platform that it's not on, imoffthelead@gmail.com will get me. Let me know or send me a message on Facebook. And thanks for listening, and thank you for coming on, Rory.
Thank you, Fran.
We'll chat again. Do you want to give out your Facebook page or email address or anything like that, or not?
Well, I'm on Facebook, Ruiri Coogan, R-U-R-I, not my real spelling, that's my Facebook spelling. So R-U-R-I Coogan, Ruiri Coogan, C-O-G-A-N. If you want to hit me up there, but sure. All I'm just doing is chatting about things that are going on. I'm not going to tell you any more. You know, if there's anything there that kind of stirs your thoughts there at all, follow it up yourself, because at the moment we are in the age of information, so ignorance kind of is a choice. So when you kind of touch off things there, you can look yourself and find it yourself and tear it apart yourself. So that's really it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ruiri Coogan. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Fran. Cheers.